We are go. Good evening, everybody. This is Board of Education special board budget meeting for Monday, April 4th, 2022. First, we'll start with our acknowledgement of our traditional territories. The Greater Victoria School District wishes to recognize and acknowledge the Esquimalt and Songhees nations on whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work. In that vein, I want to recognize the monumental event that happened last week on Wednesday, March 30th, with the province releasing the Declaration Act Action Plan. I won't go through everything here, but go to the Government of BC News website. There are some fantastic quotes there that discuss the Declaration Act Action Plan with specific focus. I do want to draw attention to the quote from Tyrone McNeil, president of the First Nations Education Steering Committee, as well as Kasari Govinder, BC's Human Rights Commissioner. Some very powerful quotes and statements made, and it's an absolutely historic milestone on our path towards truth and reconciliation in our province. To start, we're going to go to approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve, please? Moved by Tom, seconded by Elaine. And I imagine we're going to have some amendments. So I'm going to go first to Nicole, I think. I saw your hand up first. Sorry, I'm just moving everybody's pictures around here. My apologies if I'm a little delayed. Nicole, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think probably Trustee Whitaker and I are both putting up our hand for the same reason. Just wanted to add an option 6, I believe it is, under C3 balancing options. I believe it's a 6th option that Trustee Whitaker and I emailed this morning.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I believe trustees have received that, and I think I honestly, and I'm open to how staff feel. I don't think we necessarily need to amend to add that. I'm quite fine just adding it and saying that it's here, and you and Trustee Whitaker have put it together for us. I'm not sure if we necessarily need to amend the agenda to include it. But I'll just go to trustees just while we're here. Are we all okay with just adding that additional option for our consideration here, which has been provided? I think that's fair. Okay, I'm not seeing any opposition, so good. So that is added. Any other amendments to the agenda or any amendments as it is? Seeing and hearing none, I will call the question on the agenda for this evening. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Correspondence, B1, March 8th to April 2nd, 2022, public correspondence regarding the budget. Before we go into this, and I don't necessarily know what folks want to do with this piece here, but before we do, I want to acknowledge all the work that has gone into putting all of this together right up until this afternoon by all of our staff who have helped bring this to us. Specifically Lisa McPhail, Kim Morris, Vicki Hanley, and everybody, the budget team, everyone who's worked hard to bring all of this correspondence to us specifically. Lisa, I know you've worked really hard to pull this together, so thank you for that very much. Is there any, does anyone want to discuss the correspondence as is, or are we okay with having it here on the agenda? I'm not sure where how folks are feeling. Trustee Whitaker, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, I guess say thanks to everyone who has written. I replied to some. I certainly just could not work on budgets and reply to everybody. So I don't have a need to pull any out. I've managed to read copious amounts. I don't know that I've caught up on today's correspondence, but I will. And I would just also like to thank the students for all their effort on the survey. I thought the comments in there were just fantastic. So I guess I just really want to acknowledge and thank everyone who has taken the time and the effort to write. And I'm sorry if not everybody did get a response. It's just, there's a lot of you, and thank you for the volume.
Yep, thank you, Trustee Whitaker. I am working on responding as well from all of us. I certainly haven't gotten through everything to date, but I will be working on that throughout the rest of the week to try to make sure that everybody does at least hear from me, but it is challenging because there is so much. But that's good. People are engaged. Any other comments on the correspondence? Seeing and hearing none, we can go to C, 2022-2023 annual budget. C1 is the budget engagement report, and I will go to Secretary Treasurer Morris. Over to you, Kim.
Thank you, Chair Painter. In your packet tonight, you will see an engagement report. A big thank you to many people who have worked over the course of this budget process, and thanking them within this document: financial services staff, chairperson of the committee, Chair Duncan, committee members, and financial services staff, Julie Lutner and Katrina Stride have done yeoman's work here, and to Lisa McPhail and Vicki Hamley. So I just wanted to provide this memo in order to just remind you or take us back to when our process was approved and when our committee was formed, and what some of the materials on the website have been as we've gone along. I also wanted to remind you of some of the other engagement efforts that we went through this budget cycle. We produced a budget infographic that was posted to the website. We held a talking tables event in November. We held a public meeting in March 10th, and we ran a student thought exchange in absence of some of the restrictions preventing us from holding a student symposium, which we hope to pick up next year. The committee met 7 times throughout the course of this budget cycle. As well, at March 10th, participants were asked to provide input on savings and asks and risk, which they did, and that's included in this memo. Our budget feedback period was open from March 10th to April 1st, and has Chair Painter mentioned, and Trustee Whitaker, thanks to all who submitted, and thanks to the team for compiling all this information right up until today. And we did provide trustees with an updated feedback compilation since Friday, and that's been posted to the web under this meeting as supplemental information. And again, many thanks to everybody who contributed. I think it's been a very busy budget season, and I think we've shared lots of information, received lots of information. So I really want to thank everybody for everyone's engagement, and especially trustees for showing up to each and every item we've held. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Kim. Any discussion, comments, or questions on the engagement report? Seeing and hearing. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Trustee Whitaker, go ahead.
I guess I just want to, I appreciate the report, and I guess I just want to put out there, will we be having the opportunity to have further discussions as a board as to how to improve this going forward, or like what the experience was like for all of us? I just don't want to lose that piece. Secretary
Treasurer Morris.
Yes, I believe the last meeting of this budget advisory committee is next week, I think, as a debrief. We always hold, well, I like to hold a budget committee meeting after the budget's passed to talk about what went well and what we want to do differently next year in that cycle of continuous improvement. So I believe it's in your approved process, and I think it's next week.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make sure we get an invite out, but it is on the approved board process.
Great, thanks, Kim. Nicole?
Yeah, thanks, and thank you to the Secretary Treasurer for the engagement report and to all the work that was done, bringing forward so much information, both from those that engaged with us in the process, but also to all the departments and staff members who spent a lot of time and energy educating the members of the committee on their budgets and on their priorities and their plans for the future. We did, as a committee, spend the vast majority of our time receiving information, both from members of the public, but also from staff and departments. It was a real learning process, I think, for the committee, it being the first budget advisory committee that we've had so far as a district. I've expect that there is going to be some learning moving forward on how we balance the need to receive engagement with also the need to have time to deliberate and consider, so that hopefully next year we can provide recommendations to the board. This year was a unique year for many reasons, not just because it was our first time around as a committee, but also because we've had some unique challenges as a board that is certainly impacted the ability of the committee to come forward with recommendations. And I'm very hopeful that next year when I expect to have another committee advising the board, that we will have sufficient time and have all members of the committee there with us to help us to bring some recommendations to the board. So I just want to say thank you very much, everybody, for showing up to many meetings and bearing with us. There was a large volume of information. There was a lot to learn, a lot to hear and to listen to and try to understand and to make space for. Yeah, so I just want to say thank you. And I look forward to making some improvements next year. And hopefully we'll be in a better place to do that.
Thank you, Nicole. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go to C2, the presentation. Kim, back to you.
Thank you. I think, am I going to share my screen first, or I think you're going to, no? I can speak to the second slide.
Yeah, if you could share it. I don't have it. I have it on one computer, but not on the other.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
But I'll just go back to the beginning. I was ready to start it.
Sorry.
That's okay. So make sure we're displaying the right stuff here. So I'm not getting any windows.
Share screen option available, Kim?
Pardon me?
Do you have the share screen option available?
Yeah, I do. It's just when I bring it up, I'm just getting white panels. I'm not getting a picture of what I'm trying to share. It's odd. It's not happened before. And I can't see what I'd like to pick. So, Andy, can I just send it to you perhaps? Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Sorry, everyone.
I sure hope everybody out there is safe and well. It is like a hurricane over here.
The sun is kind of shining in View Royal. It's blue sky and it's kind of nice. All the clouds are gone. So I think it's just coming in your direction.
Well, as I said, I drove to Nanaimo and back today, and I have driven through more different weather systems.
I sent it, Andy. Did you receive it?
Got it. Thanks, Kim. Just loading it now.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's currently on the core value slide. Which slide would you like to start
You can
on?
go to the beginning. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a little bit redundant, but we are here to discuss the 22-23 budget. We want to give a short presentation in order just to give a little bit of background. We know there are a lot of slides in this presentation and some of them are repeats from the March 10th public meeting, but we wanted a sort of a one-stop shop for the public and for the board to be able to go to a meeting agenda and find the full presentation. Next slide, please. We know that we've already provided an acknowledgement, but we really do wish to recognize and acknowledge the Esquimalt and Songhees nations on whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work. As we embark on our discussions tonight, I hope we can all recognize and do our best for students as the recipients of the services, and that students feel seen and heard when they see the budget, and if not able to understand the budget or see support it within those numbers, they ask and can feel seen and heard as they ask us about how we are all supporting their learning. And I hope that we carry on or go forward with our discussions in a good way tonight. And I'm appreciative of the time that everybody's been able to commit to this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. I will start and then I'll pass it back to Kim as we move through the slides. So to begin, I would also like to recognize my privilege as a settler on the land, and also how fortunate I am to be able to live, learn, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Esquimalt and Songhees, and experience multiple climates in one day. So I feel very fortunate to be able to live and learn on the land. And again, with gratitude through the talking tables, the public engagement meetings, emails, student thought exchange, and online submissions, we would like to thank members of the learning community who have shared their voice. Prior to moving into balancing options and budget deliberations, we wanted to share again some of the work that we're doing to support learning, address the gaps in achievement, and also share other budget obligations that we have. And you will have seen these slides before, but as Kim mentioned, it's important for the broader audience to be able to see the work that we're doing and the work that we intend to do in the 2022-23 school year, as well as operationalizing what you see here in the goals of the strategic plan and the framework for enhancing student learning. The budget for 22-23 does need to align with the strategic plan goals, as well as the challenges and successes that we have within the district for future learning goals. The next slide, please. So you'll have seen the core values before, and as we speak through those options, we will be referring to the values that we have. Next slide, please. The goals, again, building the budget for the school district is about priority setting around how to achieve the strategic goals that help us support students, staff, and our community. And through consultation with rights holders, community partners, and stakeholder groups that was completed in 2020, we have formulated the board has formulated the 5-year strategic plan. And the result of this work is that now we have shifted from a state of collecting and understanding the priorities to executing on them, ensuring that they're resourced appropriately and in order to allow us to carry out them in a meaningful way. Needs and priorities evolve over time, as we know, and does sometimes require redirecting and reallocation of budgets from one area to the next. And we also make adjustments to budget based on a few other key factors. We make adjustments based on the student enrollment and funding provided by the province, changes to staffing or student enrollment needs, the shifting departmental priorities, which also align with the strategic plan, and key priorities or targeted projects for the current year. Next slide, please. In addition to the district's 5-year strategic plan, in September of 2021, we submitted to the ministry our framework for enhancing student learning. And this is a public document. It's written every year, and it helps us plan and report on expectations. It combines accountability with evidence-informed decision-making and system-wide continuous improvements to support the equity of outcomes for all students. Next slide. The framework for enhancing student learning aligns with the strategic plan's 3 goals, and you've seen those before. Goal number 1, next slide. Goal number 1, for 2022-2023, some of the key areas of focus will be on continuing the support that we have begun this year around literacy with the literacy plan in year 2. This includes supporting 10 elementary schools with targeted literacy teacher position, creating a district literacy framework, providing a summer literacy institute for teachers in kindergarten through grade 5, alignment of literacy provincial assessments, as well as assessment and communicating student learning, including the assessment principles, which you saw earlier this evening at Ed Policy, the proficiency scales, and the work that is occurring with GVTA in developing teacher mentors, developing e-portfolios, and district literacy and numeracy assessments. We also intend to have learning rounds, job-embedded ongoing learning to support new teachers in English and French immersion, and professional learning opportunities both during professional development days as well as school-based learning sessions, book clubs, and webinars. Pathways and partnerships, just on the first goal. Pathways and partnerships will also continue to be very active in providing equitable, culturally responsive learning opportunities for students in K through 12, which includes integral work from the Career Center coordinators. Goal 2. The Indigenous Education Department, in collaboration with schools, provides programs and services throughout the school year to students in kindergarten through grade 12 who have self-identified as having Indigenous ancestry. The shared work of achieving Goal 2 is guided by Indigenous community, families, and partners, including Songhees Nation, Esquimalt Nation, Métis Nation, Greater Victoria, and Urban People's House Indigenous Advisory representatives. And the district is committed in building relationships with rights holders of Esquimalt Nation and Songhees Nation in our joint effort to improve learning outcomes and life opportunities for students of these nations who attend schools in Greater Victoria. One means through which we can support these efforts is through investing in initiatives detailed in the local education agreement with each of the nations. These new investments would represent a concrete and intentional commitment to our shared work and would provide the nations with greater ability to provide guidance to the district on how best to meet the needs of their children. In addition, to underscore efforts to incorporate Indigenous curriculum into the learning experience for all students, we're recommending that $5 from existing targeted funds, as well as $5 from existing district allocations to schools, be earmarked for the purchase of learning resources that infuse Indigenous knowledge and perspectives into the K through 12 curriculum. We see this action as complementing the recent announcement that the ministry will be implementing Indigenous focused graduation requirement in 2023 as part of the province's commitment to truth and reconciliation. This is an excellent example of realigning existing funds to support new initiatives in all of our schools. We believe that both of these actions have the potential to support growth in Indigenous sense of belonging and in increasing Indigenous graduation rates. Goal 3. As part of Goal 3 in the district's mental health framework, our focus has been on supporting programming in all schools that purposely targets mental health and physical health and well-being. As counselors, teacher counselors with master's degrees in counseling and teaching certificates, our school-based counselors are instrumental in this work and provide direct instruction to students, curriculum for staff, and resources for parents, including initiatives such as the physical literacy at elementary and middle schools, second step implementation and continuation at elementary and instruction or introduction at middle, mental health literacy curricula at middle and secondary, trauma-informed practice in service, suicidal ideation in service, critical incident response, violent risk threat assessment, counselor collaboration days, and the assist suicide intervention strategies. Next slide, please. In addition to all of the learning goals we have in the district, as evidenced in the strategic plan and the framework for enhancing student learning, we also have buildings throughout the district that require ongoing maintenance, cleaning, seismic work, and general facility upgrades, including windows, roofing, and boiler upgrades. And attending to the climate actions involves addressing our buildings, as we know they are key contributors to climate impact. Our capital plan outlines ongoing and future work, and the budget of 2022-23 spending options will need to support the ongoing and future work through the hiring of additional tradespeople who will be integral to slowing or stopping the deferred maintenance slide. The next slide. In 2019, as we know, the board declared a climate emergency and instructed the superintendent to prepare a climate action plan. Since that time, the district has been active in addressing this motion through several initiatives led by the district's energy manager, such as LED lighting upgrades, building envelope improvements, and boiler upgrades. Savings of between $150,000 and $200,000 have been seen as a result of the work of the energy manager, Brian Leslie. And attending to the climate must include work in our buildings, as I mentioned, as they do have the biggest impact on the climate. The work in our buildings to support climate should be committed to and achieved through the capital plan. And the next slide, please. So to close, I recognize putting forth a balanced budget for 2022-23, that it also addresses new areas of growth and improvement is not easy. It takes all of us, and I'm thankful for the work that has gone in toward this. How we are attending to the goals of the strategic plan require resourcing. And while we see reductions in some areas, we will also need to reinvest in areas as we look for continuous improvement and addressing the achievement gaps and build for a responsive and supported future. And I will pass it to Secretary Treasurer Morris.
Thank you, Superintendent Whitten. Just a reminder that it's the board's responsibility to balance the budget for the 22-23 school year, and that a balanced budget is where revenues equal expenses. Next slide, please. As the board moves through its deliberations, trustees should be checking in with all of the values and guiding principles for alignment, trying to meet and balance competing imperatives. And the values and guiding principles were approved early in the process. And so I'm hoping as trustees work through this evening and Thursday's discussions that they can check in with these values and guiding principles. And I'm going to flip through the next few slides, Andy, fairly quickly. Keep going. Next. 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 And just a quick what is new. Chair of the committee, Duncan, spoke to the Budget Advisory Committee being new. We know that we have some obligations around surplus holdings and 3-year budget estimates, and that we hope that third reading is given on April 7th, which is a big improvement from last year. And the framework for enhancing student learning is new this year. Next, please. And just to give you an indication of where we're at in our budget cycle, we are here at our preliminary budget approval. Next slide, please. We know the budget is an estimate of revenue and expenses at a point in time, and the numbers will change between February and April and June and September. And so we are at a point in time, and as soon as we approve the budget, the numbers I'm sure will change, whether it's enrollment or ministry announcements, etc. Next slide, please. Enrollment and provincial grants. This is a slide from March 10th, and I'm not going to spend much time here. It's to demonstrate where there may be some ability to take on some risk by comparing our budgeted enrollment to our actual enrollment and our financial statement revenue to our preliminary budget revenue. Next, please. And just a reminder that we are predicting some static enrollment next year, and that we see some small growth after that. Next slide, please. And correspondingly, because we are mostly driven by enrollment, we would see our revenue increase as well. And hopefully we see that orange piece or that red piece increasing, because that's our other revenue, which is ISP and rentals and things like that. Next. Community use, just want to highlight again the big recovery that we've made in 21-22, that third bar from the right, and how we hope to increase our rental revenues over time. We know part of balancing the budget is trying to increase our revenues, and so we're working hard to do that through ISP and community use. Next. How do we compare in terms of what we spend on administration? We spend 3%, and Richmond, Abbotsford, Langley, and the province itself spend more than we do on administration, and Kelowna and Burnaby spend less. Next slide, please. Operating reserves. As trustees consider using reserves to balance the budget, they must balance sustainability of the ongoing expenses that they may be trying to address with one-time surplus dollars. So it's important to remember that reserve is one time, and so is surplus. Next. How do we compare when we talk about accumulated reserves? Using reserve to balance next year's budget. And so the bottom three districts use a surplus at the end of the year to balance the following year, and the lines with no green use no reserves to balance the budget, so their revenues match their expenses. Next. I won't spend too much time on these. We've seen these slides before. Our surplus has been well spent over the last few years, and we rely on it to balance our budget, and our reserves are depleting. So next. Next. Again, just a history of accumulated operating reserves. And so I just want to draw your attention to contractually committed and carry forwards. Although the surplus balance looks large at the end of the year, it is largely committed to school projects using carry forward dollars, things like the Cooper Smith Music Library, the Indigenous Education Department targeted carry forward, contractual Pro-D. And so we can see under this column what a large part of the surplus that we are committed or contractually committed to, and that the balance contingency is actually the amount of money at our discretion to use for other purposes. And so going into this year is $1.9 million in our reserve at this point. Next. I'm going to go next. Next. And this was also a slide from March 10th, and we show where we said at the structural deficit was in June last year, and how we got to the $7 million this year. And so it's just some detail for you. Next. I think we talked a lot about risk during committee, and I know the board is considering, and anybody who's worked on a option is considering some risk. We have to know what our assumptions are and know what the risk is. And historical factors that have caused variances include ministry grants received later in the year rather than at preliminary budget time, benefit changes, lack of available workforce, so no EAs, TTOCs, changes in projected ministry grants, colder, milder winters, salary changes, unusual legal costs, increased absenteeism, and replacement costs for COVID. So these are just some of the things that can throw a risk assumption for a loop. Next. I think we've talked a lot about what's available to balance the shortfall, and we know we've been working on options taking into account all of these factors. Next. I just want to say a little reminder when thinking about local capital, we know through property disposals that we have increased our local capital reserve, or will over the course of this year and perhaps into next year. Capital assets budgeted in operating may be purchased from local capital instead as a choice and as a way to use the to decrease operating expenses and use local capital reserve. Next. 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 So that we know if we are to look at our 3-year window, we have a $7 million deficit to cover in 22-23 and correspondingly smaller deficits as we move throughout our 3-year window. And just a reminder, the budget we talk about tonight is for 22-23, and even though we're looking at a 3-year window, we're by no means setting a budget for 3 years. This will be a rolling 3-year projection. Next. We have an $800,000 surplus projected for the end of the year, and if the board wants, it could project more than that, and that would be a risk. Next. We have a reserve target of between 2% and 4% in our draft surplus policy. Our current reserve is about 1% or $2 million, and if we want to reach a minimum 2% reserve over the next 3 years, we need to save $2 million more to add to that $2 million that we already have. Next. New to the website, posted last week or the week before, we wanted to make sure we were clear about some of the things that we could do or couldn't do in combination with other things on the savings or reductions list. And so we wanted to make clear that we had some choices in counselor options. We can do one of the first 3 and the last thing on the list, but we can't do all 4 things on the list to balance the budget. And similarly, as we go next. At the committee's request, we brought forward some more or posted some more music considerations. And again, we have some choices to make here. We can't do all of the things on the list. And so we hope that bundling these by topic would help the board know what could be done. So out of the 5 at the top, we can do 1 and the 2 bottom ones if the board so chooses. Next. Similarly with custodial considerations, we can do the top 2 things or the bottom 3 things. Next. Similarly with career centers, we had an original proposal around career center coordinators, and a new proposal or new considerations come forward with some teacher reduction at each secondary. And so that's an or, we can't do both of those things. Next. So when we talked about asks, reallocation, realignment, Superintendent Whitten did a good job of presenting this to us. The alignment is to the strategic plan, FESL, and we have to recognize constraint and that we can do some things, but not all. And the board has to balance student voice and agency, every student's success, unique and differing needs. At the same time, taking into serious consideration health and safety of our learning environments, the liability that the board holds in its asset base, and the climate action or climate emergency. Next. We've got some options for the board's consideration in the packet. And as Trustee Duncan and Whitaker said at the beginning of the meeting, they have also submitted an option. So thank you very much for that. A reminder that these are for demonstration purposes only and that they're a jumping off spot for the discussion tonight. So I'm going to take us straight to, just keep going, Andy, until you get to a slide called option summary. And so we've tried to frame these in terms of some key points about the option, and then some discussion points about the option, and then where does the option take us over the next 3 years. And if you can just go, yeah. And so this option is for 22-23. This is the 1-year option, and this is the operating grant only. And by displaying the information this way, we can start to weigh the options against each other in terms of how much existing reserve we want to use, if any, which is a risk. The use of the 21-22 surplus, and we imagine that we would all like to use all of that surplus in all of the options that have been brought forward. The use of local capital. So when I say that you can move some operating expenses out of the operating budget to save money and pay for those capital assets out of local capital, this is what I'm talking about. And so the various options use various amounts of local capital available to us. Risk is either in the form of increased enrollment more than we projected. Will that materialize in September or not? We don't know, and that is why it's a risk. And the other risk is that we may recognize more surplus by the end of this year than 800,000. And so is the board willing to take a risk that we will recognize more surplus this year? New spending are our asks, our realignment, and our investment in the operation. And reductions, of course, are the savings in each option that would reduce staffing and services to the system in order to balance the budget. The next option summary on the next slide is to give you a picture of each fiscal year and whereabouts the reserves, the risk, and the investment or the investment for either the strategic plan and vessel or infrastructure and liability would be addressed. And so if we draw our eyes down to 24-25, if we have a 3-year window and we're trying to accomplish saving some reserve by that time, we might say that option 5 meets our reserve of $4 million, our operating reserve balance. But it's to give you an indication of where our reserve might end up in terms of the 2 to 4% that's in our policy, and where some of the local capital reserves might end up, and whether we're willing to spend those all right away, or if we need to save those for other purchases over time. Next. And so our feedback period was March 11th to today. We're here tonight to talk about bylaw readings and final decision by April 7th on Thursday. And then we'll be able to get on with our staffing between May and June. And that's the presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. Before we move forward to going to budget bylaw readings and starting to discuss balancing options, or Kim, sorry. I know we went through C2. C3 was what you just, the balancing option piece that we just did, right? Or was there a separate balancing options portion that you wanted covered in the agenda? You're on mute.
I'm trying to organize my papers. Yes, that I think I've gone through the options in the PowerPoint.
Great, thank you.
Unless anybody doesn't understand them.
Yeah, and that's what I'm going to go to next. So before we go into C4 and discussing options, I just want to go to trustees on the presentation or balancing options. Are there any questions? Elaine, I'll go to you first, and then I'll go to Nicole.
So my understanding would be that here's where we start to talk about the options, as opposed to the bylaw reading when we know what option we've landed on. That would be because when we get to that point, I have a motion I want to put forward to look at one of the options, but that's where I thought we would do that under balancing options. Am I wrong?
Kim, does that process make sense for you, that C3 is where we would go through the balancing options discussion and pick one and then move to C4, or
sure,
how did you
I think the options are going to come before the bylaw no matter what agenda item we're on, and so I think that Trustee Leonard's approach is correct. Okay.
Trustee Leonard, I noticed Nicole has her hand up, but before I go, did you have something you wanted to bring forward?
I would like to put one of them on the floor. So if Nicole has a different question than that, then I will let her speak.
Okay, I'll note that you had a motion in mind, but Nicole, did you have a question or a comment on the balancing options? I hear Elaine wants to get us rolling on this. So.
Yeah, there was just 2 points. I had one brief question about page 474 of the pack-up, and then I wanted to suggest that we move into more of an informal committee of the whole kind of approach as we discuss the various options, respecting, of course, that Trustee Leonard has a particular option that she would like to bring forward. But if you don't mind, Chair, through you,
go ahead.
Secretary Treasurer. So at page 274, I just wanted to clarify. So this is the slide that speaks to the forecasted accumulated operating reserve balance as of June 30th, 2022. And so as I read this, what we're projecting is that we will have just over 7 million in accumulated operating reserve as of the 30th of June of this year. Is that right?
Sorry, I'm just unmuting and then going back to the, yes. But if you do look at page,
What page again?
474.
474, yeah.
Yes, that's correct. But if we go to page 472, we can see of the seven, I'll just give people a second to get there. Of the 7 million under balance column for 21-22, 7066216, we can see that contractually committed and carry forwards makes up 5 million of that. And so that leaves us with the 1.9 in reserve that is at the board's discretion to use in other ways. And so when I spoke about things like the Cooper Smith Library or the contractual obligations we have under our collective agreements, or the Indigenous Education carry forwards, or the school carry forward money that's been put aside for specific projects, that's what makes up that $5 million.
Okay,
Wonderful,
thank you.
thank you.
Nicole, follow up?
Yeah, just so in other words, any kind of school-based reserve, in alignment with our reserve policy would be included in that 5 million as well. So in other words,
yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. That just, I think, grounds us for the discussion. So thank you.
Sure.
Great. No,
Thanks,
but now
Nicole.
I do have a follow-up.
So Trustee Whitaker, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify where you say contractually committed and carry forwards. So are they, what fiscal year are those in? Like, is that something that is going to fall? Is it falling in an expense in the next fiscal year? Or is, like, I don't understand where we're looking at this, that piece goes forward.
So right now, we are projecting for June 30th, $7 million in carry forward money or leftover money at the end of the year. And we know of that 7 million, that 5 will be committed to either school projects, carry forwards that we don't have a choice about, like Indigenous education. We can't use that money for something else. Contractual obligations, either under collective agreement or employment contracts. And so we're not able to use that $5 million without
It's
impacting.
restricted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Thank
so that leaves us with, thank you, unrestricted at 1.9.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Whitaker. Nicole, back over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. So just
No
to
worries.
clarify, then what's restricted about that, those funds in terms of, say, the contractual commitments, for instance, it's speaking to the restricted it was speaking to money that is committed in this financial year, correct? This past financial year, not the one we're planning for.
It's money that's left over at the end of this year that was for a specific purpose, and we don't have a choice about changing the way it can be used for the next fiscal year. And so it will be spent next fiscal year on the same projects for which it was set aside this year. It's just left over at the end of the year.
Thank you. So we can, in fact, it is being used then to fund for, say, a teacher salary, for instance, or some other kind of contractual commitment, like, I don't know, some other kind of staffing.
Generally, the contractual commitments would be around contractual Pro D or other unspent clauses in collective agreements that require funding or carried forward funding.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any. So Elaine, I'm going to go back to you before we jump in. Kim, I apologize if I'm asking this of you a little bit late. Last year when we went through this, you did have a very handy Excel spreadsheet available that you shared that allowed us to kind of go back and forth. I am making a large assumption that you have that ready for us tonight.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Depending on what option or where we jump off from.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Elaine, over to you.
Thank you. I always find it easier to jump off from an option and then work through it to see if we have commonality in what's before us. And no cuts are any good around staffing and what we have to look at. But I would like to put option 4 on the table for the discussion purposes of starting the ball rolling to see if there's commonality between the trustees with what's located there with spending risk and savings. Reductions and savings and risk. I think staff has done a really good job of providing us with 5 different options and 5 different categories spanning sort of lots of risk, no risk, lots of spending, no spending, lots of asks, no asks. And I think for me, number 4 seemed closer to where I was falling, and so I'd like to put that one on the floor. I don't know if you need a motion, but
well, no. What I will do is I'll just see if we have just a seconder, just to put that on the floor so that we can discuss it formally. Is there a seconder? Okay, thanks, Tom. Okay, so folks, we've Nicole mentioned moving into committee of the whole. We can do that formally, or we can just be really relaxed tonight. I'm quite happy to just let us be very relaxed without needing to formally go into committee of the whole. But if the board would like to, we can do that formally. What would folks like to do? Are we okay with just letting me be relaxed this evening? Okay, great. As relaxed as we can be. So we have option 4 on the floor here, trustees. So we'll wait for Kim to pull up her Excel spreadsheet so she can share it with us, as I'm sure we're going to want to move things in and out and have some discussions about option 4 moving forward.
Yeah, I wonder if you can bear with me for a minute or 2, because I'm still just seeing a white screen when I try to share.
Sure.
So Andy, I might try to log in and log out again. Do you think that might help?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead, Trustee Whitaker. I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wonder if there's an opportunity to, just because I know that our option, the option 6, hasn't really been presented out there. I just want to make sure that we have an opportunity to present that as well.
It's a very good question. It was provided to trustees this morning. I don't imagine it made it out into a
so Andy does.
So what I'm willing to do is we do have a motion on the floor, which is option 4. I suppose we can wait and see where that goes. The board can determine how it would like to move forward with regards to your option, but we do have option 4 on the floor at this point. So I'm not sure how the board wants to move forward on that. And I know we are waiting for Kim to come back in. Tom, I see your hand up. Go ahead, and then I'll go to Nicole.
Thank you. I think it doesn't matter too much which option we pick. I mean, people will always be free to add something to the option or take something away.
Sure.
I think it's a starting point. I don't think it excludes any other option necessarily, or anything in another option. I did have the opportunity to read the option which Trustee Duncan has put forward, as I have read the other ones as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. Nicole, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think that the option that Trustee Whitaker and I are bringing forward are, I think as long as there's an opportunity to work through it so that folks can appreciate the nature of the option, because it's the first time that they'll be seeing it. I think that that's really all that Trustee Whitaker is looking for, and all that I hope to have the opportunity to do tonight. Correct me if I'm wrong, Trustee Whitaker, but
I hear that. I think the process that I feel is unfolding in front of us right now is that we do have option 4 on the floor. What I imagine we can do, and I'm not presuming what's going to happen going forward, that would be foolish, but the option that you and Trustee Whitaker have put together will be reflected in the minutes going forward, so that will be there for view. And of course, I'm not saying we're not going to get to it. I'm not making any determinations here. I'm literally playing this out as we move forward, with all respect to the work that everybody has put into this. So, but I hear you very loud and clear, Nicole, that you and Trustee Whitaker want to make sure your option is seen for the public.
Actually, Trustee Painter or Chair Painter, that's not really my the purpose of this.
Sorry,
is I
so
think
Trustee
that-
Whitaker, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I by no means do I think that option 6 will be the one that this board wants to work off of. I just think that there are some thoughts and some philosophies within this budget that I would like the board to hear and to consider as they enter into this. And, you know, it would be my hope that I could, that we could at least run through what we have created and present that, and then us choose an option to discuss. I think that provides.
So Trustee Whitaker, how about, and again, this is not my call, this is the board's call, but what I could recommend, hearing what you and Nicole are saying, is perhaps with the permission of Elaine and Tom, we can remove option 4 from the floor, noting that Elaine had previously moved it for discussion. And then perhaps we could go to yours and Nicole's option to discuss the philosophy behind it, with the intention of coming right back to option 4, since that was properly moved previously. That's going to be up to Trustee Leonard and Trustee Ferris and the board if they want to do that. But that is an option that could get us there. So Trustee Whitaker, sorry, I've seen you've unmuted. Go ahead.
I guess I'm just waiting for next steps. While we're all waiting, I think it would only take about 3 minutes to run through this.
Yep, I hear you. I hear you. We have a motion on the floor, which is an option. So I'm trying to follow the will of the board at this point. So if it's up to the board, it's up to Elaine and Tom if they want to remove this or if they want to move forward, and how we continue to move forward from here. Elaine, this is your motion. You can do whatever you like.
I'm of two minds. My first mind says that the discussion of their budget would be coming up through the discussion of number 4, where they differ from what number 4 says. And the second mind says to discuss theirs for a couple of minutes, but it would never be a couple of minutes. So when I know how long this process usually takes, and I just want us to move forward in a methodical way is what I'm trying to do here. So
Nicole and or Trustee Whitaker, do you have a presentation planned for this that's 2 or 3 minutes long that you can give it to us quickly so we can move through?
I think Trustee Whitaker, through the spreadsheet, which mirrors the same template that's used for the other options, could quickly go through the highlights, and I expect in a couple of minutes. Is that right, Trustee Whitaker? Yeah.
So would and I'm not trying to be too sticklery about this, but would you be okay if I timed you, or are you able to keep track of your timing yourself? I just appreciate what Elaine is saying, and we are at 8 o'clock now, so I don't want to get down a rabbit hole on this. Trustee Whitaker?
I haven't timed myself, but go ahead. You could time me for.
Well, and we don't have a decision yet. So Elaine or Tom, are you happy moving this off? We can go to number 6, go through it for 3 minutes, and then come back to option 4.
I'm fine with that, as long as we can try and stick to that, because like I say, it's 8 o'clock.
Okay, so it's been withdrawn. I'll take that as a withdrawal of the motion. Trustee Whitaker or Nicole, do you have your option available so that you can share your screen and go through it with us?
Andy, can you share screen? And Nicole, if you want to introduce while Andy's getting that set up.
Sure, I can give a couple of brief moments, although I think Andy's going to be really quick. So why don't you take it away?
Okay, I'm going to start your time. Are you guys ready?
Unmute on that screen. So
okay,
this
you guys are good to go.
Nicole, do you want to just introduce quickly, or?
I think to keep the timeline in, I'm going to let you just get to the items.
Okay, I'm going to restart you guys until you're ready. So let me know when you're ready.
Okay. So as we can see, this budget clearly keeps students at the center of the budget and cuts as far away from them as possible. What you'll see is that this budget acknowledged the need to maintain our reserves and to move toward building reserves as we move forward, but we don't see that until year 3. This budget also utilizes local capital and funds from the recent land sales. So we do see over the 3 years, local capital stays similar to the same amount. Oh, I keep trying to, can you just scroll down a little bit, Andy? Trying to scroll down on that screen. So go down about, there you go. Additionally, this budget has risk, which includes an enrollment increase of 100 students. With when we look over the past few years, that seems to be about the norm. And it's the difference between the fall that we had through COVID and now. And it also has an increased surplus protection of $1.9 million, which is also the amount of our reserves. So there's some protection there. Within this budget, we do have a new ask, which we've just gone past, which is the new money that we want to spend is with our EAs. Right out of the gate, you will see we look to put 400,000 toward EAs to bring them to 30 hours a week. We know this isn't the full cost, it's only a 30% of that, but we think that this is a program that will take time to implement, and we think that we should practice and do it in little steps. We think that this is an issue with recruitment and retention that would be a big help within our schools to start addressing that. And we think that with more EAs in our school, with less retention issues, that this will also support our staff and will also help to address health and safety issues in our learning environments. When we go down to our cuts, you will see that, and the other ask that we have in there, in our cuts, we do see the loss of an HR full-time position. So we did notice that they were asking for 1 month to be renewed for a specialist. And we thought that that was the least that we could do with cutting one of their staff members and adding the EA 30 hours to their workload. We also, which isn't in, or it is in this video, we also add the INED, and we take all of this money from the EA savings. When we go down to what we are savings, sorry, next page, our second our savings come mostly from administration cuts as much as possible. It includes the elimination of 2 online applications, the Thought Exchange and the Enrollment Projection. It takes into consideration historical savings in areas that we have not been able to spend. So we see that in a couple of areas. And also on one-time savings that have been identified by our departments. And I thank all of them for doing that. Also, the notable loss there is to 20% reduction in collaboration time of teachers. Just where we hate to see that loss, it just seemed an area where everybody else.
And I'm going to get you to wrap up.
Where everyone else was seeing cuts, that was one area we also had to go. But what is most notable about this budget is that it does look for savings in senior administration staff, which is something that we have heard from a lot of members in our community, that this is the direction we want to go. What it does not see is cuts to our secretaries, to our QP, nor does it see cuts to music. I do understand that that discussion will happen, but I hope that through what we have created here, as we do cut from budgets, we will see the savings come from these areas, and then we can determine if that's really the cuts that we want to make. I have lots of suggestions further on how we can move this to change and adjust. There's also an additional $75,000 in savings from the ISP department.
And can you wrap up? Sorry, can you, we're at almost 5 minutes.
I'm just going to stop talking, and you know what, we'll put this out there and we'll just have to argue it through. And I'm going to just express my frustration that I'm not able to present this in a way that I think community would like to hear it.
Okay, well, you certainly would have been more than happy to request a presentation for this at the opening of the agenda, but that did not happen. I can give you another minute.
We'll make sure that we do
Whitaker,
that
I can give you another minute if you want to go through this, but I'm trying to respect all members of the board here as well. All right, nothing further. Then can we go back to the option for Excel spreadsheet? All right,
May
so
I just make one comment,
Yep. Go
Chair
ahead, Kim.
Peter. You'll note that the bylaw reading at the top looks different for capital. And that was because we have to add in the amount that we're spending from local capital this year. It won't impact the deliberations on the operating budget. It just changes the bylaw number from the previous version. So no real change in terms of the operating budget.
Okay, thank you. You'll make sure to catch us if we miss that change in the bylaw number. All right, so we're at option 4. So trustees, option 4 has been put on the floor for us to discuss. I turn it over to you for any shifts, changes, adjustments, comments, or questions relating to this option. Elaine, you did move it, so I'm happy to go to you first, but the floor is open to all trustees. And there is no rush.
I think I'll wait for other comments. Again, I said that when I looked through the options that were before us, and Anne and Nicole's only came this morning, and I did spend almost all day comparing it to the ones that were in front of us. So I have done my due diligence. That I still came down as option 4 being the best starting point from my perspective for a balance of spending, asks, and risk for the district, because and balancing for all 3 years. So hopefully the board won't be in this predicament or position in the next 2 years, and they can look forward to adding some more spending and in the future years. So that's all I have for now. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Elaine. Nicole, I thought I saw your hand up. Everybody is very small, so please make sure to keep your hand up on the right on your screen so I can see you. Nicole, over to you.
Yeah, I think what I would say initially around option 4 is that it still seeks to reduce community link youth and family counseling services and seeks to additional music savings, which I think, I don't want to see. I think we have other options available to us that we should explore rather than those kinds of direct services and programs for students that we've heard loud and clear have significant benefits for many of our students. What I do like is that it purports to utilize 100% of the available surplus, and I think we should be looking to try to maintain as much as possible the status quo. I don't think this board is really in a position to be making any huge changes, especially when it comes to changes that impact services and programs to students. We are at a point where we're close to an election, and we've seen a significant amount of turmoil and a loss of public trust. And so the extent to which we can, end our term trying to create somewhat of a steady state, keeping services and programs intact, making some changes that enhance those supports and the programs for students in ways that are a little more creative. I would like to see us looking at options that reduce the costs and further away from direct supports to students. And I don't think that this option quite does that. I would be interested to explore some potential amendments to the option as a way of, trying to work collaboratively, using this as a baseline, if that is what the board wishes to do. That on the top of my head, that's sort of where either I see an opportunity in using all the surplus, but also see some challenges in terms of what it's proposing to cut. I wonder if, as we work through these options, Chair, we could have the Secretary Treasurer walk us through what would be cut and what would be added in terms of investments, so that we're not, just to help us sort of structure our discussion.
Sure. And the other question I was going to ask the board, I'm going to note your question, Nicole, and I'll get back to it. But do we want, Nicole said something that I think is helpful. Do we want to go through a bit of a rationale and feelings about these before we start making changes, or do folks want to dive into changes and shifts right away? So I'll just leave that for folks to think about. Kim, did you want to just go through option 4 as succinctly as possible, just to let us know the spending and the reductions? I know it's hard because there's a lot here,
Sure.
and it's going to take a bit of time, but as succinctly as you can.
Sure. So option 4 doesn't increase the reserve. We know we're looking for 7 million, so I don't think any of the options were increasing the reserve this year. I think several of them probably looked at second and third year adding reserve to reach our 4%. How much of the existing reserve would we like to use? If any, option 4 doesn't use any of the 1.9 that's available to us. We only are holding 1% reserve, and we have some other options here. We are proposing in option 4, this option does propose to use the full $800,000 projected surplus. The local capital amount that option 4 considers, I believe, is about $900,000 from local capital plus year 2 of 5 of the network infrastructure. And so this was a way to have an ask down below and take it out of local capital in addition to balancing the operating budget with some other assets. In terms of risk, this revenue increase or this enrollment increase is about 170 students, I think. And the increased surplus projection is just based on some 1 or 2 year trends where our projection in the spring is not necessarily what we end up with at the end of the year. So under this option, if all of these things were agreed to, we'd be looking for about 3.5, 3.6 in reductions. In addition to the year 2 of 5 network infrastructure spend, we'd be looking for 0.1 elementary school VP time at each elementary. We want to try to slow, or this option tries to slow the deferred maintenance by adding 2 carpenters per the infrastructure presentation from February. The ITL security analyst is a spend in option 4 that is being considered. And as Superintendent Whitten spoke to, the Indigenous Education LEA support is a big responsibility that we have, an investment that we should be making. In terms of reduction, so if we were to spend those items in option 4, our shortfall would be 4.7, and there we move into the savings. And so the school allocation is a one-time reduction. Daytime custodial is a combination of reducing elementary and middle school daytime custodians by 50%. So they would share a daytime custodian. It would not eliminate daytime custodians from elementary and middle completely. Counselors would move some staffing from the operating grant to the community link grant in order to be able to deliver the mental health framework and to maintain all of our counselors. And this would result in 7 YFCs and 2 outreach workers no longer being contract renewed in community link. Education assistant relief budget is based on trending underspend in the budget. Collaboration time is something that this option doesn't think it can afford at this point, and so that's a full savings there. This option does contemplate reducing by 1 associate superintendent. This option reduces or eliminates some elementary strings, and I believe takes middle band and strings down to 80% of this year's allocation, so a 20% reduction. International student program savings one time. We feel that this could be taken out of this year only, and then we'll have to see how enrollment increases over time and what recruitment efforts need to be made. The alternative career center teacher reduction rather than the career center coordinators is in option 4. The reduction of 1 late French immersion class, going from 5 classes at 5 schools to 4 classes at 4 schools. Clerical staff from 12 to 11 months and 11 months to 10.5 months, so a reduction there. Counselors is based on a historical trend savings. Reading recovery reduces this contract by 100%. I think we have 3 schools that are wanting to use this in the future, and I'm not sure what the other schools are doing. So to spend $73,000, we're not sure what that would look like in this option. School admin in small or low enrollment schools is an option here. Thought exchange, district ukulele, the enrollment projection contractor, the parent and student education funds, which can be covered off from other discretionary budgets, and a thought around just making an overall 5% reduction to services and supplies in all departments, but not at schools, because we know they have the $800,000 one-time reduction above. And so this would bring us down to a balanced budget here under K. And the summary of this option is shown here. So new spending 1.1, reductions 4.7, use of surplus 800, use of local capital 1.3, and risk is 1.3.
All right, thank you, Kim. Okay, trustees, back over to you for discussion of this option. If this is a time and point where you want to make some additions, changes, this is where it is. So feel free to bring it forward. Jordan, go ahead.
Thanks. I have a question, and then I have, I guess, a motion. My question is just looking at the reductions here. I'm curious as to the rationale for reducing elementary and middle custodians versus secondary level custodians. Just in my mind, the place that we need custodians the most is going to be elementary school. So that's just an assumption I'm making based on having elementary age children. So I don't know, am I missing something there? Why we would be looking at elementary and middle and not secondary? I don't know if anybody can speak to that through the chair.
Yep, Kim?
Yeah, so this is based on experience throughout several districts where some element of daytime custodian is maintained at secondary, given the volume of students or the enrollment in the school, the fact that the students are bigger, they have a little bit more discretion around their time. Sometimes they're offsite, come back with lunch, garbage, things like that. Sometimes we see more vandalism or a little bit more abuse of the building with bigger students or older students. And so those are some of the factors around trying to keep a little bit of, or trying to maintain daytime custodians at secondary.
Okay, it's all coming back to me now as being a messy secondary student. Thank you for that. I was going to, for this option, I'd like to see us consider adding the PVP at Tomi, the 1 FTE, as a reduction.
Okay, so and did you want to, was that just the one reduction? Did you have an ask that you wanted to put in, or you want us to just start with the reduction and see if we have support for that?
Well, we could do it in two parts, because I think there's probably going to, I imagine there may be more support for adding it, then we might be a little more divided on how to
what's next. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion to add the PVP at Tulmi reduces 1.0 FTE to the reduction. That's a reduction of 150,174. Do I have a seconder to add that reduction? Looking for a seconder to add the reduction. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've got lots of small squares here. So Trustee Whitaker, I saw you're waving. Thank you. So we'll add that in. We'll debate adding this. Is there any debate on adding this to the agenda or to the option? Sorry, I'm tired. Trustee Whitaker, go ahead.
I fully support this. I would even increase it by one more, but we'll start with the one.
Let's start with the one. Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor of adding as a reduction, please signify by raising your hands. Just looking at small squares. Okay, that is unanimous. Okay, so we've added that as a reduction.
And then
Jordan, I
if I-
believe you had an ask. Yeah, sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so what my thought was, I would really like to see us fund the Indigenous collaboration time, the district team Indigenous collaboration, which is it's 25,000.
Mhm.
So it's not, doesn't take up the rest of that. And then I wonder about using the rest for general like collaboration time, which we aren't currently funding under this option. And I know it's not necessarily like a, you know, it's I think so critical to the, you know, educational programming that is offered to students, although we don't see it right up front. But I know that our most vulnerable students are students with the greatest need. They do have teams of folks supporting them who do need time to be able to get together and find out the best way to support them. So that's sort of what I was thinking. But I'm certainly open to what my colleagues want to say. But I was thinking of sort of grouping that Indigenous collaboration time and then adding in the balance in collaboration time. I don't know if
sorry,
125,000 provides us very much in collaboration, but maybe better than nothing.
Right. So it would be, just for folks, it would be $25,000 Indigenous collaboration add, and then the balance 125,174 to be put into other collaboration time. That's the proposal. Do I have a seconder? Tom? Okay. So discussion on this proposal. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I can vote for the reduction, but until we actually see that the board is making some structural reductions, I hesitate at this point to be adding things.
Okay.
I just feel that, you know, I guess my philosophy is slightly different than some other people's, I guess, but I really feel I don't want to leave the next board, because I know they won't be able to make these decisions in the first year. I don't want them having to deal with a similar or larger deficit next year. So I'd like to see us move through some of the reductions and see if we can come up with something, so that if people want to add back, we have something to work with. That's just my feeling.
Sure. No, thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. So right now on the floor is moving the collaboration over, and then the balance of the 150, 174 from the PVP.
Maybe, Chair, you want to take that in two pieces, because one is smaller and more specific than the other.
Sure. So why don't we take it, then I'll take it as one piece then. So first we'll start with the district team Indigenous collaboration time, moving that as an ask. So we've got a mover, we've got a seconder for that. So we'll take that as the first ask, $25,000. Is there any discussion on that? Yes, Elaine, go ahead, please.
I agree with Tom at this point in time, until we've gone through all of the reductions to see if people are okay with what the reductions are. I don't feel I can add anything back until we get to that point. I'm certainly willing to entertain it and have that as the first two items to add back if we get through reductions that are in front of us. But I suspect that there will be some discussion on some of the ones before us that people will not vote for, or cannot vote for, or don't want to vote for. So our reductions might dwindle, and then if you've already moved to put the asks in, it's really hard to take that back. So I was hoping that maybe we could table the asks till after we've gone through the reductions.
Jordan, would you be okay with
I'm
that
totally
suggestion?
fine with that. I was just thinking of trying to create balance, so I'm happy to do it the other way.
I was with you there, Jordan. I feel what you're trying to do there. So we'll move this off the table. Let's just look at reductions right now, which I think is I haven't heard from Angie, Trustee Whitaker, or Nicole, so I don't know if they're feeling similarly around focusing on reductions first. I'm happy to hear from any of you three, if that's what you would like. Sorry, Trustee Whitaker, didn't quite hear you there.
No.
Okay, Nicole, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a fine starting point to look at reductions. Yeah.
Okay, great. Any further reductions that we would like to put on the table? Sorry, Trustee Whitaker, I didn't hear you. You're off mute, so just making sure.
Oh, sorry, my daughter's just having a thing.
Okay. Any further reductions that trustees would like? Tom, I saw your hand go up. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't really know where to start here, but I would say elementary strings.
Believe elementary strings is here. Yeah, elementary strings reduce 1.81 FTE 100%.
If I can just jump in
Yep.
here, I think that what we're talking about is everything on listed under number 4 is currently on the table as a reduction unless somebody wants to change it or add something else or take
That's
something
right.
off. But
That's right.
so what Tom just said, that's already on there. So unless somebody wanted to change it, that would stay. So that's where. So this is the starting point, that everything in front of us is up for reduction unless it's changed.
Everything on the left is a reduction. Everything on the right could be moved over if trustees wanted to move it over.
Okay.
Sorry, Tom, is that what
no, that's fair enough. I just withdraw my ask there.
Sure. No, yeah, no problem. Thanks for clarifying that for us so that we understand what we're looking at here. Trustees, any other reductions? Jordan, go ahead.
Anne, did you have your?
No, go ahead, because I'm on, my screens are, go ahead, you go first and then I'll do it.
The only other one that stuck out for me, and I just want to acknowledge, like, these are people's jobs, and so, like, this is hard, and everybody in our district is so incredibly valuable and contributes to, you know, the grand project of educating our students. But in terms of trying to keep those cuts as far away from students as possible, the other one I saw was the reduction of 1 FTE from HR. I think it says year 2-3 only for 66,000.
So, and thanks for that, Jordan. Just to clarify from Kim, and maybe I've got this wrong, so I think this clarification will be helpful. That would only apply to the second to not to this current budget, but to year 2 and year 3. Is that right? Or am I because that's what I'm seeing year 2 and 3 only here mean.
Yes, that's correct. We would hope to achieve this savings in year 2 and 3 through attrition.
And it's money that we could potentially be able to be putting towards reserves or whatever down the line. Like, it's here for us to consider for this budget, correct?
All of the items on the list are for the board's consideration in the upcoming year. The reason that we put year 2 and 3 only was that we were hoping to attend to this savings, not in 22-23, but in 23-24 through a retirement. But it's at the board's will what they'll do with the list. Yeah.
So we could put that in this year's if we chose. Okay. So Jordan moved that we take the 66,945 from HR and put it into this year's budget reduction.
I was really just thinking of it as the year 2-3, because I just see, because if we're projecting forward, then that does give us, like, for me, it gives me some security around the level of risk that we're taking. Do you know what I mean?
I guess I'm confused why we would maybe I'm wrong. I'm confused why we would consider that for now for the next 2 or 3 budget. Like, I think what we want to do now is put in reductions that we can count towards the upcoming budget. Do we not?
Well, then why is it on the list?
Because I think what Kim is saying is, we can consider it now to be removed for the next budget. The preference from staff is that it would be removed through attrition in year 2 and 3, but we can consider it now if we want. Is that right, Kim? Sorry, maybe I've got this wrong.
You are correct.
So if I can just jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Elaine.
If to Jordan's point, we didn't do it now, but the board wanted to give direction that, yes, we wanted it done through attrition in year 2 or year 3, how would we go about that to the Secretary Treasurer? Would that be direction at this point in time, or a motion at this point in time, so that it wasn't lost in next year's budget? Not that you would lose it, but just so that there's a paper trail so that everybody knows that this is happening next year. I just want to know what the process would be.
I wonder if we want to park it like we did the asks and bring it back at the end of today or Thursday to make motions for 22, 23 or and onward. That's just a suggestion, or you could do them one by one. It's up to the chair and the board.
Thank you.
No, that's fine.
Okay, so we're okay with
I'm
moving.
just trying to move us along.
We can park that. Okay. Any other requests for reductions from trustees? Oh, right. Sorry, Trustee Whitaker, you had your hand up. My apologies. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I would add an advisor. For 102,526.
Sorry, is this a reduction?
Yeah.
What's
Okay,
an advisor?
I'm looking under the reductions list and I don't see that. So maybe Trustee Whitaker, you can tell us
It's
where
one
you're
of
looking
the
at that.
itemized items. Sorry, there was another sheet that Kim sent out of positions and what the cost would be to each of those.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if we
Right.
have
So
that here in front of us.
I can speak to that a little if you
Sure.
would like. Yeah, so on the savings considerations list, we had some costed items, and for discussion, we also had about 3 or 4 positions in between operating and the community link. And just so you know, the advisors that we have in the district are in HR and in occupational health and safety. So just would be good to keep that in mind if we're already thinking about reducing HR. So just a bit of information.
Okay, thank you. So Anne, did you want that on the table?
Yeah, because it sounds like what you're doing is you're moving that HR position to the second year. So it seems reasonable this year. As well as
we haven't decided that it's being moved. Sorry, just clarifying. We haven't decided yet that it's being moved to year 2 or 3. We've parked it until we can come back and make a decision. So that hasn't been decided yet.
So do the 2 of them need to be in conjunction? I'm not sure. I would also like to add the facilities reduce of 1 assistant manager, which I believe is something through attrition we think is, if I'm not mistaken, that in Chuck Morris's presentation to the budget committee, that there was some discussion that this gentleman was going to be finishing up some work and that this would support some other things. Sorry, thanks, Kim.
So for a year 2 or 3 consideration, I guess then. Kim?
Yes, the facilities reduction is the same situation as the HR reduction through attrition in years 2 and 3.
Okay, so not for this year.
Unless the board
Unless the board decides, that's right. Okay. So we're still looking at reductions for the upcoming budget. Any considerations for the upcoming budget? I hear we've got a couple interested in the year 2, 3, the assistant manager and the HR. But are there any reductions, any interests from trustees for the current year's budget for reductions or any additions? Nicole, sorry, small. I'm going to open up these windows here a bit. Sorry,
No,
Nicole, go ahead.
That's okay. I just wanted to clarify whether or not a couple of items were on the list of reductions. So we've got the addition of the 5% services and supplies at the district level, correct?
Yes, at the bottom.
Okay, and the enrollment projection contractor, is that on the list? I know there's no way to make it bigger, unfortunately, but.
Yes, it is. Kim has
Okay.
highlighted it there. Yeah.
Okay, and then the other, I just wanted to double check. The I think it's called the board office manager. I don't know what that exactly means, but it was on the list. And is it the same sort of situation where we have attrition and we're looking at a 2 and 3, year 2 and 3?
Was that a unit cost the same as the advisor, Trustee Duncan, where it was on the?
I think it was listed as 127.32.
I never saw that in any of the options presented before.
Yeah, I've got the unit cost document from our sixth budget committee meeting up here, and I'm not seeing that listed here.
It's on the
I want to say it was a
it's
revised
on the
list.
savings considerations, one of the original lists where we provided a couple of other unit costs for a manager, a director, associate director, and an advisor. Just knowing that the board would want to discuss administration.
And is that a situation where there's attrition, where we'd be looking at year 2 and 3?
There's no attrition for those positions right now.
Oh, I think I found it. Sorry, Nicole, I'm just going to confirm. It was listed as manager for 127.32. Is that right?
I have it in my own notes, sorry. And
Yes,
it is. And
Oh.
it's board office manager. That's all it's listed as on my
Yeah.
notes.
Okay. I think it's 127.32.
Yes.
Yeah, it's I wondered if we can consider that along with we had a couple of, there was an ISP 75,000, I believe it was a one-time, and a literacy team very kindly volunteered 35,000 in savings. I'm wondering if we could consider those 3 items.
Just through Kim, can you confirm, just because I'm quickly trying to search here, what the ISP savings was, or perhaps I'm looking at
ISP was the 150 and it's already in this one. And then the other one is the district literacy savings with 37,000, which is not in there.
Which is not. Yeah.
What was the third one you said, Nicole?
That was the manager, the board office manager for
Board
120.
office manager, yeah.
Yeah. Which is 120,732.
So Jordan had to put hers forward in a motion. So if any of these are for consideration.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next.
They have to go for motions, but the ISP one's already in there.
Yeah, I see that here. So we'll go to the literacy savings first, because that's the second one I think I heard, Nicole. And Nicole, if I get any of this wrong, please feel free to jump in. The literacy savings of 37,000. Do I have a seconder for that to put that into the reduction? Okay, Trustee Whitaker. Any discussion on adding the district team literacy savings of 37,000 to our reductions? Trustee Whitaker, go ahead.
No, sorry, I thought you were voting.
Nope. Seeing none, all those in favor of adding district team literacy savings 37,000 to our reductions? I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and all those opposed? Okay, and Jordan, sorry, what were you opposed or were you in favor?
I am all things. I'm going to vote in opposition.
Okay, so that is carried with Elaine and Jordan opposed to the addition of the district team literacy savings. So that is added. I'll just give Kim a sec to add that. All right, any further reductions that trustees would like to add to consider?
So I would add a director as well, associate director for 163,138.
Okay. Sorry, Anne, I apologize. I should have waited because we had Nicole wanted the manager brought forward first. So can I pause on that and come back and we can go to the manager that Nicole brought up? So Nicole, you wanted to add a manager that's 120,732. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Do I have a seconder to add that to the reductions? Seconded by Trustee Whitaker. Any discussion on adding the board office manager? Elaine, go ahead, please.
Well, as it's not on our reductions with any feedback as to what the implications may be for these reductions. The other ones we've had feedback and implications. Maybe the Secretary Treasurer could speak to that because I don't know what the implications are. All right.
Go ahead, Secretary Treasurer. We're talking about the board office manager.
Yeah, so I think the item was listed as board office or facilities. And so at the board office, we have 2 managers in financial services and I believe 3 in human resources. So perhaps Superintendent Whitten or somebody would like to speak to that. But in terms of the financial services, we've seen no increases in that staffing for several years. And since we've been taking on our capital program, the overall budget has increased by a significant amount with no increase in staffing. So that would be very difficult out of financial services. Facilities managers, I believe we have 3 that are not funded by capital. And so I might invite Chuck, the Director of Facilities, to speak to that. And if the assistant manager is going to be revisited through attrition, I believe at facilities, it would be very difficult to reduce another person, but I would invite the chair to invite others to speak up if they would like. But in terms of financial services, it would be extremely difficult, and I'll let others speak to the managers in human resources and facilities.
Chuck, over to you if you wanted to comment. Go ahead.
Sure, Chair. So if the assistant manager is reduced through attrition, that would help everybody a lot because there's a lot of transfer of information that needs to take place between him and his manager. Manager takes on our rentals program throughout the entire district, and he's ramping it up to try to get up where we were before with a lot of the rental revenue coming in. The other assistant manager and 2 managers, we would go down a deep dark hole if they were removed.
Okay. Thank you.
Given that there seems to be some confusion about what this position is or whether it was even properly on the list, I will withdraw the motion to consider it. I don't think we should be considering anything where the impacts are not clear to us, or where we're hearing from staff that there would be significant implications, negative implications. So I would move to withdraw the motion to consider.
Okay, Trustee Whitaker, are you okay with that since you seconded?
Sure.
Okay, that is removed. Thank you. Trustee Whitaker, you had a reduction you wanted to add, the director or associate director. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what I would like to see is either another PVP from Tolme or a director or associate director. And I don't know if that needs to be something that is going to come back to the table on Thursday, if we could get some further detail. But, you know, based on everything that we are hearing from staff, teachers, etc., is that there is a very strong desire to see these cuts as far away from students as possible. And the Tolme building is exactly that. And while I understand that's not where we want to be, I think it's important that we take the cuts as far away from the students as possible. And as we are on better footing, that then we can rebuild those other areas. But I think for 1 year, we need to be saving the programs and looking to, you know, maybe some things fall through the cracks and they're not done quite as neat. We don't have all the right logos on things, but in the exact place. But when it comes to our students, I think that we make sure that they have the best that they possibly can. So I would like to see either another principal or a director or associate director, but I'm looking for another 150,000 out of administrative staff from the Ptolemy board office. So I don't know if you want to have a discussion as to what position that would be, but that's what I would like to see. Is I think that there are more savings to come from that area. And I'd like to see that happen.
Okay, so perhaps you know, as best as we can, being as respectful as we can to the work that everybody here does, in the way that we discuss and describe their work. I think that would be really good. Kim, can you do us a favor and just describe what the difference would be of the director or associate director cut? That's a 163,138 cut from board office and facilities. And perhaps this is back to Director Morris, or another PVP reduction, another one FTE reduction.
Yeah, so we have a few directors in the district. We have a director at facilities, we have one in budgets, we have one in information technology. And so these are key leaders in our organization. Associate director would have been in HR, I believe, and where another PVP would be coming out of the district team. And so I'm not able to speak to the loss of an associate superintendent if that is carried out, and a PVP. I think a second one might be a hardship in terms of PVP. And from my perspective, I'm not sure that any of the directors or associate directors are able to be reduced. But perhaps Superintendent Whitten would like to speak to the second PVP if the associate superintendent and the first Ptolemy PVP are on the list. What would a second impact be?
Okay, thanks. Deb, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. With the associate superintendent on the list to be reduced, as well as one PVP from the district team, I think services and supports in schools, you would see it would be very difficult. And they are in schools, they work alongside students and teachers. And so to deliver support to inclusive learning and differentiated instruction to teachers, to EAs, and to PVP and to students, I think that would be very difficult to implement. There are lots of things that PVP on district team do that are not necessarily want to, but have to as directed by the ministry as well as by the work within the district. So that would be my perspective, to reduce an additional PVP from the team as well as an associate.
Okay, thank you. Any recommendations for further reductions from the board? We don't have any recommendation on the floor, so are there any recommendations? Nicole.
Yeah, I wondered, Chair, if we could make the spreadsheet just a little bit bigger for a moment. And I just want to go through the list here one more time of reductions. I'm in particular interested just to clarify what's happening with counselors. I am wondering if, I just want to be clear what option 4 is proposing to cut, if anything. So yeah, so council, that's what I thought. So I'm wondering if, and again, if we're not ready to do this yet, then I appreciate that. But I'm hoping to move a motion to have some of what is being removed here added back.
Okay, let's not jump into add backs quite yet. Okay. I hear where you're going. I want to try to keep us focused on any reductions first, and then we can do.
Fair enough.
What I would like to see is let's get all the reductions. Let's look at our difference and see what we can add back if.
Yeah,
and where we land there. Is that okay, Nicole? Sorry, I don't want to jump on you there, but.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for your flexibility. I appreciate it. Any further reductions that trustees would like to add? I'm just scrolling through. Sorry, folks, if you've got your hand up and I'm not seeing you. Okay, I see Jordan's not here, maybe putting kids to bed or something, but in any event, oh, there she is. Hi. Jordan, we're just checking, kind of not a final time, but just again, if there's any...
I was here. I'm just putting on some socks. It's cold.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Hopefully they're warm and fuzzy. Any further reductions that trustees would like to have put here? If I don't want to run ahead, so maybe we'll give folks just a couple minutes to think through any reductions that they'd like to see.
Can I just ask if it's bigger for your view? It is? Okay.
No, it's, oh, sorry, it isn't.
No,
Sorry.
it didn't change.
Not for me, no.
So
It's,
I think
it's
Nicole,
great.
what
I can
you
even see it. This is good.
What you
I'll
can
move my
do,
screen a little bit here.
yeah, is move the screen. Yeah, that's what I've done. I've made everyone
Okay.
really small.
Okay. Sorry, it's huge on mine. I zoomed, but I guess it doesn't make a difference the way Zoom is displaying it.
Any further reductions, trustees? And if not, I'll ask, are we feeling that we can move forward from these reductions and start looking at add backs? Kim, with what we have now in the reductions and taking into account the new spending that we've added, can you tell us what our difference is in terms of any add backs that we can take from what we're looking at?
Yeah, so we've passed two motions. One is a second or a first PVP from Tolme for the 150. And we've passed a motion to move the literacy savings of 37,000 over to the list.
Okay.
And we've parked the asks, which are the Indigenous Education collab time, some partial collab time, and I think the YFCs and outreach, if I'm right, Trustee Duncan. And
yes.
the so we haven't added any asks yet.
Okay, what's our balance then, I guess?
Oh, sure.
Like what do we have available? I don't
187, 174.
Okay, so trustees, you can see here, thank you for that, Secretary Treasurer. We have 187, 174 that we have shortfall that we can use, or balance that we can use. Elaine, go ahead, please.
Again, before we do any asks, I was wondering if we could go to the risk section. If we all agree on the risks, then we have money to add back. If we don't agree on the risks or don't agree that the amounts are right, we might not have money to put back. So that would be the next section I would like to talk about.
Okay. I've heard that, Elaine. Thank you. How do folks feel about looking at the risk piece? I feel like the reduction side, folks seem like they're at least okay to move forward. So how are we feeling about risk, the risk side? Elaine, since you brought this forward, I'm quite happy if you want to lead off.
Well, it seems to me it's a pretty good balance of using local capital surplus and risk, projected revenues, projected surplus projections. I am comfortable with these numbers. I've seen other numbers that I'm not comfortable with, but these ones I can live with. I think they're reasonable, and I think the district can still operate with the amounts we see in front of us. So I'm okay with them.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the risk we have here? Noting, as Kim did earlier, that we have nothing to increase the reserve, but we also have nothing added to the use of the existing reserve. So those are both empty in terms of the risk side of this equation. Trustee Whitaker.
Yeah, so, and thank you for this. I note that the increased revenue from enrollment is much higher. You know, it looks like you've used 175 and I used 100. But I do think this increased surplus projection, I would take more risk on that of at least another 500,000. It's been pretty historical year after year that there is more than $1 million. And we also know that we get all sorts of grants and little top-ups throughout the year. That in a year where we're looking at cutting actual programs to students, I am fine with taking a little bit more risk and reducing that risk next year. Just in order to save the programs themselves so that they are still operating, and that we're able to, as we get back on our feet and have less unforeseen costs throughout the year, that we can rebuild those programs. So for me, I would like to see that increased surplus projection at 1.5.
Okay, so folks, we have an increased surplus projection right now of 1 million. Trustee Whitaker is, I think I hear, moving to add an additional 500,000 to that. Do I have a seconder to put that proposal forward? Nicole has seconded. So is there discussion? And sorry, Trustee Whitaker, I'm happy if you want to continue. I know you've spoken already, but it's on the floor if you'd like to add anything. And you're on mute.
I just believe that when we look historically and we see this motion every September or October that comes forward, where we've got, you know, several $1 million that we're now going to allocate, and it's always not part of the budget discussions, but I think I'm happier to see that number and that motion that comes forward every fall to be a smaller number and to use that money now. So I would like to see that at 1.5.
Okay, thank you. Any other, sorry, Nicole, you seconded, so happy to go over to you for comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to essentially agree with what Trustee Whitaker is saying, but you know, I think that the risk is mitigated by our historical realities, and I think, you know, it's an informed risk, and it's informed by what's happened in the past, and I think that we would be in a better position as a district to take some risks in terms of projecting our surplus and maintain programs and services, rather than have to do it on the back end, or in my view, in a more haphazard way or in a more incremental way. My concern is that if we don't, then we are going to lose programs and services, and to try to rebuild that will be difficult and costly. So I hope that we'll support what Trustee Whitaker is suggesting. It's not as much as I would like to see. I would like to see us even take more risk, because I think we can, based on historical realities. But I think it's sort of a happy medium, which hopefully we can agree on as a board.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Any other discussion on adding $500,000 to the surplus projection? Elaine?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of the motion. I think, as one of Nicole or Anne pointed out, the increased revenue for enrollment is already more than what we are projected to increase. So that's risk right there. And if we were able to put money back into the local capital, I would like to see us be able to do that, as opposed to increasing the surplus projection. So I'm not in favor of going over the $1 million. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Elaine. Kim, just before we go, can you perhaps remind us?
I'd like to close too.
Yeah, we're not done quite yet, Trustee Whitaker, but thank you for that. Kim, if you could just remind us, there's been some comments about historical figures around the surplus projection. Can you take us back maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years? Well, perhaps the last two are not good, but and just tell us where on average we fall on that surplus projection. I know we've got revenue enrollment increase here as well, but can you just help us ground a little bit in that historical number?
Yeah, I think that, you know, as we could see in the presentation, sorry, I'm just going to find a couple of slides here, that we've had healthy reserves from which to draw. And so without any sort of intense or intentional eyes on the reserves or on the spending, that we haven't been fully spending our budgets and we haven't been keeping a good eye on them necessarily, in terms of, we've been doing great about not overspending them, but we now have eyes on the underspending. And so we've been trying to reduce those carry forwards and balancing the budget with that. So I think in terms of our operating reserves coming in, I think that right now is very early in terms of the projection. That's true. And we do end up having a surplus discussion at the end of summer after the financial statements are through. But we can see from the surplus history and the surplus budgeted to balance the next year that those reserves are decreasing. And we can see that in the 1.9 at our discretion this year. And I would say that we are getting, if we add the 500, we're getting close to the 1.9 that we have in reserve now. And I just want to always remind the board that surplus should be used for one-time expenses and hopefully not used for ongoing expenses. And so it's at the board's discretion what they'll do or their debate, but just something else to keep in mind. But reserves are decreasing, and so we're very early in our surplus projection. So this risk of 500,000 may come to fruition. However, we know that our reserves are depleting and that we don't have as much left at the end of each year as we did say 3 to 5 years ago. So just a caution there.
Okay, thank you. I see you, Nicole. I just want to check and see if any other trustees have comments to make based on the Secretary Treasurer's statement. I see none. So Nicole, go ahead, and then we'll get Trustee Whitaker to close.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, I guess, clarify when we're talking about reserve versus surplus. So in my mind, when we have a board reserve, it's money we're intentionally saving, maybe because we have something we're planning to do, or we're saving from the perspective of having a contingency for that kind of rainy day that no one thinks is going to come and then suddenly does, like a pandemic. But in terms of surplus and speaking to the unspent funding for a given school year, I see that as slightly different, because I see that as money that was intended to fund programs and services for students in the system now. And so when we have underspent or not spent it, it's one thing to plan to put some of it aside to build a reserve. It's quite another thing, in my view, to be unwilling to spend that surplus to fund services and programs on an ongoing basis. So for instance, in the next financial year. So I just want to kind of clarify that we're talking about the same thing, because I think sometimes it can become confusing, really identifying the difference between spending that surplus, that unspent funding for a given year, and building a reserve. And I think is an important distinction to make. And in my view, from reading the slide decks and all the information that's been provided, I don't believe we've ever had less than just over 3 million in surplus, so unspent funding. So I just want to keep the board to keep that in mind.
And except for this current year, which I think we only have 1.9, is that right, Kim, or am I
So
wrong?
far, yes.
Right. So far, sorry. Before I go to Trustee Whitaker, I'm just going to put myself on the list. I'm comfortable not just with the level of risk we have here, but I'm comfortable with adding some additional from the surplus to the 500,000 here. I think it's risk worth taking. I find myself agreeing with Trustee Duncan around the need to utilize surplus to protect what services we have right now that is supporting students, or even investing in our strategic plan. We have made commitments in our strategic plan that I have a very, very strong proclivity to want to invest in. and I feel, protecting programs is absolutely important, but we have a duty as well to ensure that our students under our watch are gaining success, all of them. And our strategic plan aims to do that. And so I want to be able to say that in this budget, we've done that. And I think adding with the 187,000 we have right now, and then adding an additional 500,000. And I know we're not necessarily talking about add backs or even putting in asks, but to me, it allows us an opportunity to invest in that strategic plan that this board passed and supported. So for me, I'm going to be supporting the increase in surplus projection to 1.5 because I want to start investing in the commitments that we've made. So that's what I have to say at this point, but I'm always interested to hear what my colleagues say, and I appreciate risk is challenging, especially the time that we're living in right now. Trustee Whitaker to close, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to make the comment where we are talking about risk and these dollars that, I am not someone who takes on a lot of risk. I like to be very conservative, and where I look and say I feel comfortable because I don't feel it's a huge risk to add that 500,000. A big part of that is that if we are really wrong and suddenly we have zero new enrollment and we have no surplus left, if we are wrong, we do have those reserves to cover it. We should not be touching those reserves. I don't believe for a minute that at 1.5 million, we will be touching those reserves. I'm more inclined to think that we are going to see even more than 1.5 in that surplus projection, and that could go to reserves or it could go to capital. And I just wanted to comment on Trustee Leonard's comment about wanting to see local capital increase by not utilizing those dollars. But we have lots of money coming in over the next year and two on local capital. We've got 625,000 coming in from the hospice sale. So I'm not as concerned about capital because I see it being replenished anyway. That I do see that it is one of the areas to look at utilizing in this budget because it is going to be receiving a top up. So I just wanted to make those comments of clarification. I'm not by any means proposing a risky budget. I'm well aware of how these things are connected and to ensure that we don't end up in a bad position. Not that I have ever heard of any board in this province ever being fired for not following their budget or sticking within it. But I'm not making that suggestion.
All right, so I'm going to call the question on increasing the surplus projection by 500,000. All those in favor, please signify. And those opposed? And it carries with Tom and Elaine opposed. Okay, so I think we've gone through the risk piece, unless anyone else has anything they want to look at for risk. Seeing and hearing none. And I'm saying this very slowly. Are we prepared to go into the add backs or the asks? I want to make sure that we do this patiently,
Chair.
deliberatively. Yeah, sorry, Trustee Whitaker, sorry, go ahead.
I just wonder if we want to take like a 5-minute stretch your legs.
Sure.
break.
Sure. Yeah, can I have a motion for a 5-minute break? Moved, seconded, all those in favor? And we're
Thank
good for a
you.
5-minute break. See everyone in 5 minutes. All right, we are coming back. See, we're just gonna hang tight for Angie and Elaine. There's Angie, welcome back. And there's Elaine, perfect, we are back. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So Kim, can you please remind us what our balance is? It should be about 687,174. There it is. All right, so we are in the part now where we look at asks or add backs. So I'm just sorry, folks, having some computer issues here. Okay, I see you all now. Who would like to start? I see Nicole, go ahead.
I think we have to start with Jordan because we put her off before.
Oh, right, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you everyone for keeping me honest here. Jordan, go ahead.
You're doing a great job. This is complicated. I wanted to add back the, or not add back, but to add new spending for the Indigenous collaboration.
Okay.
For 25,000.
Okay. So we have a motion to add Indigenous district team Indigenous collaboration for 25,000. Do I have a seconder? Yep, I have a seconder. Angie, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing no discussion, I'll call the question on adding the 25,000 for Indigenous education collaboration. All those in favor? And those opposed? None opposed. That is unanimous. Okay, thank you. Jordan, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Or?
I did, but I'll wait my turn. That's the only one that we'd set aside. So
no, that's right. Thank you. Okay,
Nicole.
That's good. Yeah, thank you for thanks everyone. I appreciate your patience. This is all very, yeah, stuff's happening. Nicole, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I would just, through the chair to the secretary treasurer, would you mind scrolling up just to where we get to the counselors a little further? I think it's just
I think you're looking for the reductions, right, Nicole? So
yes,
we have to go down.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, it is down. There we go. Thank you. Wonderful. Yeah. So at line 72 of the spreadsheet. So I think for me, it's really problematic to be cutting counseling services. And I think it's even more problematic for me to be, you know, doing so in the context of what we know is a growing need for counseling supports, to do it in a way where we are, you know, trying to fund teacher counselors by cutting youth and family counselors. You know, they're both very, very important. And so I would hope that we can be creative tonight and see what we can do to add that back in so that we have both counseling supports for our students at a time when they really, really need it.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. Sorry, was that, sorry, maybe I lost your thread. Was that an intent to add back the 623,110 to add a portion? Yep. I'm sorry, maybe I missed it.
No, it was to add it back. So what I'm looking for
the entire portion?
Do not see reduction, to see zero reduction in counseling supports. Yeah.
Okay, so to add back the entirety of the 623,110. Do we have a seconder to add all of that back? Trustee Whitaker. Okay, so it's seconded. It is on the floor. Any discussion? Jordan, go ahead, please.
I guess my concern is I don't want to support adding anything unless I understand how you're going to balance it. So I don't know if it's possible for the mover to provide some context around where you're going to find the money.
I personally would take it from the new spending of the network infrastructure, 2 to 5 year. that is in the new spending, but it says from local capital above, and I do agree it should come from local capital, so. That's
So
what I-
sorry, I'm sorry, Trustee Whitaker. Nicole, I know you were the mover. Is that where you want to see it come from? I think the question was to you, so I just want to make sure we're following process.
Yeah, no, I think that is the most obvious suggestion. I think that there's going to be money. Well, there'll be money in local capital for that to be funded through. And I'm also minded that we're expecting $1 million from Pacifica as well. That's going to come in, and that could partially fund that. So yeah, there's other pots of money that can fund that. So to me, that would be the obvious thing to move. But I guess really what I wanted to do was first get it on the floor that, to have the board's take on whether or not we want to see counseling services returned, and then we can be creative and look for ways to balance that. But I think it's an excellent suggestion, and for me, the obvious one.
Okay, thank you. So the suggestion then would be to take 623,110, for most of it, attribute it or mitigate it through the 502,850,000 in the network infrastructure. And then
Chair,
sorry.
Can you talk? I think the Secretary of Treasurer is going to try and help you out there.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just, I'm
Okay,
trying.
sorry.
Yeah. No, thanks, Elaine. Kim, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Nope, that's okay.
I just want to make the point that the reason that this infrastructure moved over to the ask column is because it's already funded from local capital in this area here. And so the only reason we could add it here would be to take it from local capital. So to say to take it off this list in order to balance, this would go up to 1.8 or 1.9, and you're quite close to your max spend. Just a heads up.
Okay, thank you for that.
And sorry, I'll just remind us.
Go ahead, Kim.
Sorry, and I'll just remind us that with that add back of 623, or sorry, before that add back, you have 662 to spend, and so that item is 623.
That's right. Okay. Trustee Whitaker, you had your hand up.
Actually, so I'm sorry, Kim, just because I haven't been able to update mine as quickly as you are. So where are you saying that we're at again? Sorry, so I have added the 1.5 here. Okay. And I think we added the collab.
We added the 25,000
for 25.
No.
And so that leaves us at currently, sorry, I've got it bigger now, so it takes me longer. 662 left to spend. And the motion on the floor is for 623. We've already got it covered, so we're not actually having to have that discussion on where it's going to come from because it's in the 600 there, right? Right. Okay. If you use the amount that you have left to spend. That we're still at, yeah.
From what I'm hearing, the 502,850, if we were to remove that, would then bump local capital up to close to our limit, which is not what we want to see. Instead, we could take the 623 from our remaining 662 that's currently our balance. So Nicole, go ahead. I saw your hand up.
Yeah, which is good. And I look forward to hearing what my colleagues have to say about that. But I do think that we should have a discussion about the 500,000, but we can wait to have that in a moment. But so yeah, I hope that my colleagues will see the wisdom in funding this area. I think it's not just about the fact that we've heard very clearly from our stakeholders, from students, from parents, from staff, from experts in the field about the importance of the services provided by all of our counselors. But I think the other part for me is that we have some flexibility here. We don't cutting those services at a time when folks are feeling very raw, very vulnerable. after 2 years of a pandemic and all the other stresses and strains that folks are feeling and our students are feeling, would be a shame. And to me, this just so clearly aligns with both our strategic plan goals and the goals and the targets set out in our FESL, our framework for enhancing student learning, that to me, it's just a no-brainer. And I hope my colleagues agree.
Okay, trustees. So we're going to go back to this question. Excuse me. Just looking here. Does anybody have any contributions they want to make to the discussion about taking 623, removing it from the reduction and then pulling that from the balance that we have left, which for folks who are curious, I've done the math, that would leave us with 39,064 left in balance. Trustee Whitaker.
Thank you. I also want to speak to the importance of keeping as much counseling and mental wellness supports in our school right now as we come out of the pandemic and are going through an endemic. We have a war going on. Just everything that we hear out there in the world, if we are going to support our teachers and the learning environment that our students are learning in, we really need to have places within our schools and adults within our schools that students can go and talk to, so that learning can continue in the class, and those that are struggling have got the opportunity to find some balance and some support so that they're able to get back to class and learning. And we also have so many families that school is their connection, and that is becoming their place to seek support and answers when they're feeling uncertain and scared within the community to reach out and to ask for help. That I just think that these positions are vitally important, and I would like to keep them all, and I will vote that way. But at most, if we have to, I would like to see it a very minor reduction in counselors if we just can't balance without it. I would prefer, as I said, to keep them all. I think it's hugely important, and it will be important to all of our schools, to the school culture and communities, and just again to the health and safety of our school communities.
So this, thanks, Trustee Whitaker. So what essentially taking the entirety of the 623,110 would reduce 7 of the current 26 contracted youth and family counselors and 2 outreach workers in order to free up community link budget for 5.5 teacher counselors. Am I correct, Kim? Is that accurate? Okay. Yep, go ahead, Kim.
Yeah. Yes, that is correct in this particular scenario. I just wondered, I'm not sure, but I think the outreach workers were new this year, and I wonder if somebody from senior leadership, Deb or Harold, if they wanted to speak to the outreach worker pilot program, or I'm not sure about that for the upcoming year.
Harold here through the chair.
Go ahead, Harold. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, our outreach workers are a pilot. We started them as part of our mental health framework to see if we could get students re-engaged and attached. And what we've found to date is that they don't have a caseload large enough at this time to support their use. So we're looking at other options.
Okay, thank you.
So if I can ask a follow-up question to Harold.
Yes, okay. Yes, Trustee Whitaker, go ahead. And then I've got Nicole.
So Harold, do you have the cost then of what those 2 outreach workers are? Like, is it the intention where they're a pilot? I'm assuming they must have come from the mental health grants that have yet to be reinstated. So, which is sad, but I'm wondering what is the cost of those two positions?
So they did come through the mental health grants, and that was part of building our framework, and we thought we could shift it into Community Link, and they're about $180,000 for the 2 of them.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, Nicole.
Trustee Whitaker asked the question I was about to ask, so thank you.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, folks, we have. Oh,
may I
Jordan,
ask a question then?
Yeah, and then I saw Elaine as well. So Jordan, you, and then Elaine next.
Sorry, I'm just trying to clarify. So this is moving back all the YFCs, and that includes the outreach workers we just talked about? that were part of a pilot?
Through to Kim or Harold.
The motion on the floor is to remove the whole 623,000 from the savings and move it back out. And I'm hearing that the pilot project may or may not have worked out, and so and we know
Is
the
the
cost.
pilot project included in that dollar amount?
Yes,
Can
the
I-
2 outreach workers are included in the 623, and the cost of those is 180.
So can I make an amendment to the motion?
Yep.
To reflect that not the 180?
So your amendment would be
Dollar
to
value.
take.
So the
Sorry, hold
dollar
on, hold on.
value is 443,110.
Thank you, Trustee Whitaker. Yeah, I was just going to report that out.
Would you allow, if you would allow that, Chair, as an amendment, I would move that as an amendment.
Sure. So just, yeah, let's try to keep keep focused on one speaker at a time if we can. So reducing the ask by 180,000 would bring it back to 443,110, which would reduce the 7 YFCs, or which would keep the would bring back the YFCs, but not the outreach workers. Am I on point there? Okay, great. All right, that is an amendment. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Seconded by Tom. Any discussion? So the amount that we're talking about now is 443,110. Any discussion on the amendment?
Yes.
Trustee Whitaker, thank you.
So, and then perhaps through the chair to Harold. And again, I know I keep asking, are we going to get the grants back? But if we got grants back, because, you know, the BC School-Centered Mental Health Coalition is going to keep asking too, where would it be possible, or you said that you were talking about a different option than this pilot project. Do you have something in mind that if we got grant funding for say 200,000, that would be used for, that would continue to support families?
Part of what we did, yeah, thank you through the chair. Part of what we did through our goal 3 was we built up a support system for our children and youth in care, particularly with our Indigenous students as well. And we would like to add to that side of our care through grants in mental health if it came through. And again, our grants were really small. They weren't able to sustain 2 outreach workers, and that's why we use Community Link to try and make it work.
Excellent. I would like to hear more about those programs as we go forward, and happy to help you advocate to get some of that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have the current motion on the floor, which is putting back 443,110 for the 7, so putting back the 7 YFCs that were originally reduced. That is the amendment. Is there any further discussion on that amendment? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify. Those opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so Trustee Leonard opposed, Trustee Whitaker abstained, the balance in favor, so that passes. So the motion now is to bring back 443,110 from the reductions, meaning the 7 YFCs. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify. Opposed? And Trustee Leonard opposed, so it carries. The new balance, just for those who are curious, I know Kim will update that momentarily, but the new balance that we have is, I believe, if my number is right, 219,064. I think that is correct, but I'm just going to wait for Kim to catch up because we are moving quite quickly.
While trying to take notes and.
Yes. That's okay. I'm taking some notes and numbers on my side too. Need any help? And Kim, yeah, thanks. You read my mind. Okay, perfect. My number was on. 219.64 is our current balance. All right, trustees. Any additional asks or add backs we would like to discuss? Trustee Whitaker.
It's not the biggest one, and it's
Sure.
not my. Here's the thing: Student and Parent Education Fund. So the history on this is that was part of the DPAC's allocated per student ratio. Thus, it still goes to parents. It's just determined that it has to go to parent education. So I think that this is actually a commitment to the DPACs that we have, that we can't really cut it because we'd be cutting our per pupil DPAC payment. Regardless, I think that opportunities for parents and principals to come together for learning is critically important. It is actually utilized every year, whether there's, maybe $1,000 or $2,000 that isn't, it is picked up the next year. So I would like to see that come off of there. And
Okay.
as I guess we're doing this one at a time.
Yeah, one at a time. My
more.
understanding on that one, Trustee Whitaker, is that is here because Deb or Kim can correct me, but that was going to come from discretionary, I think. I think that was what was commented. Kim, am I wrong there? So we're putting it here because it's going to come out of a different pot. It doesn't have to come out of our operating. Is that right?
I think that Superintendent Whitten could speak to this as well, but yes, that's the intent, is that it can come from a different line item in existing budgets rather than the standalone item. And I think Deb may be able to comment on participation rates and things like that.
Sure. Deb, did you want to just comment on that? And then I'll go back to you, Trustee Whitaker.
Yeah, I think historically we have spent close to the amount for the Parent Education Fund, but we have not spent close to the amount for student education. So I think moving forward, it would be great to spend both, but we can find that from existing allocations. So it doesn't have to sit as a separate line item.
Okay, thank you, Deb.
Can I ask
Trustee Whitaker, over to you.
Can I just ask for clarification then from the Secretary Treasurer? How much are we paying the DPAC and how is that determined? What is their line item?
I'm not sure I can answer that tonight. Sorry, that's a little bit of detail. I'm not able to.
Can we park that for Thursday? Trustee Whitaker?
You can. I just want to I created the Parent Education Fund. I'm well aware where the money and the funding came from, and it came from the specific line item that was a per pupil funding promised to the DPAC. So where this is definitely coming from a different pot, it's the DPAC's pot. So I suspect, yeah, maybe we want to hold this one and hear from President Carmichael, how she would like to see her funding looked at. If they've got lots of extra funds, we don't have to keep giving them money.
Understanding that if we did remove this from here, as the superintendent has said, it can come from other discretionary funding at that need. Jordan, go ahead, please.
Okay, I've got a small one that I'd like to add back in, which is district ukulele, which is, I think, big bang for a small amount. It's a very accessible program that serves kids across the district.
Okay, so the motion is to add back $16,525 for district ukulele. Can I have a seconder for that? Yes, Nicole, are you seconding?
I am.
Okay. Any discussion on that add back? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify. And that is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Okay, Elaine, I know you had your hand up and I skipped you. So Nicole, sorry, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to go to Elaine first. Elaine, go ahead, please.
I'd like to add back the clerical staff reduction for 94,496.
Okay. All right, so we have the clerical staff from 12.11 a month to 11.10.05 a month. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Tom. Any discussion? Nicole.
Yeah, I just want to say, yeah, thank you to Trustee Leonard for suggesting this. It's certainly on my list as well. I think that often the clerical staff sort of get forgotten because they just work so seamlessly and behind the scenes often to make things happen. And I think, you know, we heard it tonight at Ed Policy around some of the work that gets done, especially over the summertime. And the importance of that work and how difficult it is for them to be able to use that bank time that they build up. So I definitely support adding this back.
Okay. Any further discussion on adding back the clerical time, the 94,496? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor? And that is unanimous. I'm going to, Nicole, would you mind if I put myself on the list? I know I had you next, but
Not at
I
all,
actually,
it's fine.
I was hoping to pop one in here. So I would like to add an ask, and the ask is for the communications assistant.
Can we ask where are we right now with numbers first?
We are at 108,043 remaining in our balance.
Fabulous.
So I would like to add in the ask the 68,000 for the communications assistant. And if I have a seconder, I'm happy to motivate. Okay, Angie, thank you. So we talked about this last year, and I understand and appreciate that you know, there's some discussion about the spend of this 68,000. My concern or idea around putting this in here is that we currently are a one-person communication shop in SD61. We do a lot of consultation, we do a lot of outreach, a lot of engagement, and that is one person driving all of that with some support at the district office. We have reduced some district office staffing. And so what that means is as staffing is reduced at the district level, that work needs to be spread amongst those who remain. So my concern is that the support that the one communications person has currently is going to be somewhat lessened, if not moderately lessened, because of the decisions that we have made. The communications assistant does a considerable amount of work. It is not just about branding. It is about ensuring that we are engaging with our community. And the one thing that we have heard consistently over the last term is that our community wants us to engage with them. They want us to be able to go through emails and post all the emails that they have online. They want to be able to engage with us in public. They want to be able to know what's going on, know what's happening, be able to send in feedback and have trustees receive that. With the reduction, we have removed Thought Exchange. That is an engagement tool that removes that tool from the communications department. So that is a loss of an engagement tool, which means that is going to be more put on the communications department to engage and find some innovative ways to do that with that reduction. I think it behooves us to do what I really wanted us to do last year, which is to allocate a very small amount of our overall budget, $68,000, to support our one-person communications department. And I think I've made it relatively clear my rationale for doing that. Just for folks who are curious, if that is approved, it will leave us with $40,043 left to spend. So that is my rationale for adding that 68,000 for the communications assistant. Any other, Tom, you seconded, so I'm happy to go to you if you wanted to comment on that. Go ahead.
Sure. I think that my experience over the years following ukulele and going to their concerts is that the students that they serve are often students who are missed in a variety.
Oh, sorry,
ways.
Tom. Sorry, we're talking about the communications assistant. Sorry.
You are. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. The
sorry.
community. Sorry about that. Yes.
It's okay. It's late. It's late.
I think that one of the things we've seen over the past year is that all of our committees have really stretched our communications in the district, and from what I can see, the problem will only be worse next year. And I would hate to lose the existing person because they felt they couldn't do the job. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Any further discussion on this ad? Seeing and hearing none. Trustee Whitaker, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't support this. This is very, very far away from students. And while I appreciate that the one individual is working very hard, community wants to feel heard. That's what they're looking for. That's why they're sending hundreds of emails, because they feel like people aren't listening to them. They see it repeatedly, and we hear it in our board meetings, we hear it at committee meetings, we're hearing it in our emails, we see it on Twitter, and we see it on social media all over the place, that the board is not listening. The board is not listening. That is why we are receiving multiple emails. That is why the communication department, she's working very, very hard, because there has been a lot of turmoil and chaos on the board. If the board wasn't in that place and the public felt like the engagement that we were having with them, that the board was listening, I don't believe that there would be that pressure. I also believe that there are lots and lots of people helping the communications in School District 61. We've got principals, we've got secretaries, we've got all sorts of people posting and pushing out thoughts and ideas of what are going on in our schools in many, many, many ways. But I'm sorry, I just find that this ask is kind of a slap in the face to those people that are losing their positions, that are losing programming, that anyway, I really struggle with this. I think if the board was doing a better job, that the communication person wouldn't be spending so much time trying to create a positive narrative. So I'm sorry, I cannot support this in any way. I'm actually inclined to cut the position to a lower amount of hours.
Thank you, Trustee Whitaker. And that I just want to comment that the work that our single person communications department does is thankless at best of times, especially by certain members of the board, which is unfortunate. This work matters, and I think it is entirely Trustee Whitaker. I have the floor. Trustee Whitaker, I have the floor. I'm going to go to Trustee Waters. Jordan, thank you.
I think we hear a lot about how important engagement is for our community and what a high standard of expectations we have for that engagement. And to me, I think there seems to be maybe like a real misunderstanding of what communications does, because it's not about spin or some narrative. It is about making sure that we're able to hear all those voices in our communities, that we're able to capture student voice, that we're able to have all of these events that really, help the board hear those voices and allow people to share their experiences. So to me, for a healthy public education system, you do need to have relationship in community, and it's our communication staff that really facilitate that relationship between the district and the communities that we serve in a multi-directional way. So make sure that we're able to communicate to them, sure, but more importantly, it's about getting that back. So, I mean, I think we've heard a lot about the desire for engagement. I don't actually think that this is far from our students at all. I think this is about how do we make sure that we're, best able to listen to our students and reflect their needs. So for me, I feel like there might just be like a misunderstanding or what that engagement process looks like, and the role of communications department in supporting the relationship with all of our rights holders, stakeholders, and communities, and our students. So, I mean, it's tough in a budget to sort of balance everything out, but I think what we're asking for from one person it's not manageable in the long term. And if our board wants to engage on everything in a meaningful way, then we need to support that with funding. And I think our community has been really loud and clear in that they do want meaningful engagement. So in order, to provide that, we do need to fund it.
Any other comments? Seeing and hearing none, I'll close. Yeah, I actually agree. I couldn't agree more strongly with Jordan. I don't just think it's a fundamental misunderstanding. I know it is just by hearing what I'm hearing at the table. I think when you mention the other communications work that members of our learning community are doing, the one person, the one department that is touching everything in our district, absolutely everything, from our Indigenous Education team, from all of the committees, including the George J. Naming Committee, the Climate Action Committee that we have, the School Liaison Committee. All of that work is coming through our communications department, and it is a single individual doing yeoman service for this work. And I think if we want to raise to the standard that I know our community expects from us, it means ensuring that we are staffed to the level that our community expects us to engage with them. So with that, I'll close debate. All those in favor of adding the 68,000 communications assistant to the asks, please signify. And those opposed? And the motion carries with Nicole and Trustee Whitaker opposed. And we are left with 40,043 in our current balance. Nicole, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions, and then I want us to talk about music, if we may. So I guess a couple of quick questions through you, Chair. I'm not sure to the Secretary Treasurer or the Superintendent. I wanted to clarify what's happening with reading recovery. So we heard recently that the other two school districts in our area, Sooke and Saanich, were reconsidering whether they're going to continue with the reading recovery in their districts. And at the moment, we cost share the coordinator position amongst the three districts. I noticed it's on the list of reductions, and I'm wondering whether we've got confirmation from the other school districts about whether they're going to continue to cost share that position with us. So that was my first question.
All right, thank you. To Secretary Treasurer Morris.
I think that probably Superintendent Whitten is the best informed to speak to that one. Sorry.
Sure. No, my apologies. Deb, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, we do not. They're still working through their budget deliberations, and so decisions here would be within the district. And that is, yes, the amount listed is a portion of the contract for that reading recovery coordinator. And having discussions through district team and elementary schools. As was mentioned this evening, we're looking at the possibility of having 3 elementary schools that want to continue with reading recovery.
And if I may, Chair, through you, just to redirect. Yeah, thanks. Thank you. And so will those 3 schools that want to continue with reading recovery be able to continue with the program without the reading or without the coordinator position being supported by us?
Through the chair, we would need to discuss that further. They do have reading recovery teachers in those schools, but to deliver a program without the coordinator, I'm not sure how or what that would look like. So that we obviously would support through literacy and that area, but to do a program such as reading recovery, I don't know if they could do that without a coordinator or a teacher lead.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So I wonder if we can sort of park that for a moment.
Sure.
I'd like to come back to it if I may in a minute, but I wondered if we could turn our attention to music. So we added back in ukulele. Middle school music is taking a significant cut, and we are removing elementary strings entirely in this option. So I wondered, I'm really wanting to hear some suggestions. My concern around the approach to cutting music is that we have not done a program review. We don't have an idea about how, where there are concerns, how those concerns could be addressed. We haven't discussed potential solutions. We're having these discussions about an entire program in the context of a budget discussion, which is, in my view, not ideal. My concern is that by cutting an entire area completely, it doesn't allow us to undertake a program review. It doesn't allow us to easily or at all rebuild a program. And so I'm wondering if we can have a discussion about kind of what we're intending here. Because at the moment, in terms of the middle school music, I can see that the reduction, I believe, was 20%. Is that right? Through the chair to the secretary treasurer. And so I can see that there's an option to rebuild or do something different when it comes to programming around that in the context of undertaking a program review. But with elementary strings, essentially it's cutting the program. And so I don't see how we can in future undertake that program review and potentially rebuild a program if we just cut it all. So it's a difficult question, I know, but I think it's one that we have to address. And I feel like it's one of the last areas here that I certainly find problematic. And so I'm wondering if we can have some feedback from our staff about what some alternatives would be. And I know that we only have 40,000 left, but I do think that we should be discussing that $500,000 network infrastructure piece in the context of the local capital funding that we know is coming. And in particular, I'm thinking about the $1 million in Pacifica money that we know is coming this year. So that's a lot, but I'm looking for some direction, some guidance, and some advice from our staff.
Sure. So I'm assuming, maybe I shouldn't, that Kim got most, if not all, of Nicole's comments and questions there. There was a lot, but they're all good. So Kim, I'll let you work through those.
Yeah, so I think just so there's clear understanding, in one of the documents that I believe was sent out, we calculated local capital, and the amount of $2 million available that would be in reserve by the end of this year, or the 2.4 includes the 1 million from Pacifica. So just to be clear, that that's already in the figure that you're dealing with here in terms of that 2.4 available. So just to be clear about that. In terms of music, I guess I would maybe ask Superintendent Whitten to speak to that around the equity piece and other options. And the committee did request 2 more options or a few more options from staff. So I'm not sure if the superintendent would like to comment or associate superintendent.
I can start if that's okay, and then I would invite Harold to speak if he has additional comments, but as we have seen through this, the elementary strings is not offered in every school. And so one of the spending options was the cost to put it in all elementary schools. So that would be an option that's listed. I think music is in the curriculum, and so music does need to occur through the elementary pieces. So that we obviously know that's important. So I think we're not eliminating music per se, but it is not equitably distributed across all schools currently at elementary.
Okay. Nicole, were you
sorry,
want to follow up or redirect?
Sure.
Or
Yeah, sure. And I was just pausing. I thought maybe Associate Superintendent Caldwell might be intending to add something. So I was pausing intentionally.
Oh, sure. Okay. Harold, did you have anything to add?
Through the chair, no. Superintendent Whitten has stated that it is not in all of our elementary schools. And when we look at what is happening for those string students at elementary, there are often students left behind that are doing other things than moving ahead with their programming. So one of the things that we've looked at moving forward in terms of into middle as well is how can we support music from K through 8 that's in the curriculum, that's supporting everyone being exposed to music, and exploratory will address that if that's the way we go in terms of programming in the future. But currently, we don't see every middle school with a music exploratory either. And we're looking at the number of band students or music students in middle at approximately 44% for the district at middle. So there's an inequity there as well. And I hope that sort of gave you a little bit more background.
Okay, Nicole, any further comment?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to you both for providing more context for me. I suppose where I struggle is when I look at elementary strings and I look at the FTE of 1.81, and I note that, about 1,000 students in, I believe it's 15 elementary schools participate. And, I'm certainly alive to the equity issues or potential equity issues. I suppose from my perspective, I struggle because for me, equity isn't always about everybody having the same programs. To me, it's about, equity is more about allowing for difference, allowing for local programs to develop, but ensuring that there is no issue with access, with accessibility. There's no impediment to a student, having fair access to a program like strings. And so I think I've always struggled with this both last year and this year when music's come forward, because it just keeps striking me like, well, if we did a program review, we could look at concerns and maybe look at timetabling, or look at how to encourage programs to develop in other schools, but we've kind of missed that opportunity. And so, and as a result, it's we're in a position as a board where if we were to not address this particular line item and just cut the entire program, I really just don't see how it could be rebuilt in future in light of, the opportunity to have those discussions. So I'm not really sure where that leaves us. And I know we don't have a lot of money left here to sort of move around. But I wonder if any of my colleagues have any thoughts.
Well, Nicole, I've actually got Trustee Leonard and Jordan both have their hands up. I don't know if it's on this topic or perhaps something else, but I'm also just noting for folks, it is 10:04. And just want to make sure that everyone knows, I think, and this is just me perhaps being generous. I think we would like to at least get one reading done tonight so that we can come to Thursday with at least one reading under our belt, but just reminding folks we're at 10:04. Jordan, you have your hand up first, and then I'll go to Elaine.
I have a question. I think Nicole said there's 1,000 kids in elementary strings across 15 schools. I was not aware it was so high. If somebody could clarify where we're actually sitting on that, would be helpful.
Either I'm not sure who wants to take that, Deputy, or sorry, Superintendent Whitten, or perhaps Harold can take that.
We haven't done an evaluation of how many students are taking strings, but I've never heard the 1,000 figure. From what I've heard, it's much less than that. So I'd have to go and pull the difficult part of this is students in elementary strings are not enrolled in a strings class where we can actually pull that data. We would have to do a survey to see how many students in strings in our elementary schools.
Okay.
Okay, and then I just wanted to say for myself, in terms of looking at this entire budget, equity is like the key lens for me. And so I think elementary strings is an example of a program that is really inequitable, and that's where I feel really uncomfortable with it, because I know we've got 27 elementary schools, but only 15 are benefiting from this, and then not just equity between schools but also within schools as well. So just to share, that's sort of where I'm trying to find comfort is around with that equity.
Thanks, Jordan. Elaine, and then Tom.
Same with me. I mean, most of what Nicole says, in my mind, contradicts why we would look at this as a program that we would not fund. So we're taking $208,000, giving it to students who then get the added benefit of music in certain schools at the cost of what we could do with that for all the students in elementary. So it can be offered, and it has been 20 years ago, in prep time, if the schools so choose, which is no cost to the district. So if a school chooses in elementary to offer strings in a prep block, there is no cost to the district. So it's sometimes about choices within the schools. And if they offer it outside of prep time, which is funded, then there is a cost to the district, and the other students in the other schools that don't have a strings program are disadvantaged. And that's where I fall down on the equity issue. And so I can't support this going forward unless it's delivered in a different way. And we've had this discussion many times over the years, and students and teachers and the community had lots of time this year to talk about that in a different way. We've talked about it, and here we are back again. And I don't want to see us back again at the table next year. So I am a musician. I love music, but this has to be delivered in a way that is fair and equitable for all students in the district, and it can't be seen to be delivered this way going forward, in my mind.
Okay, thanks, Tom, and then I'll go back to Nicole.
Sure. I just wanted to comment that 1,000 students is pretty close to the total number of strings players in the entire district. So, I mean, I don't know what the exact number is, but I know that 1,000 would be somewhere close. And so that would include elementary, middle, and senior strings players. The other thing I wanted to say was that from what the music teachers that I've heard from on the subject have said is that grade 6 is plenty early enough for students to pick up a stringed instrument and learn to play it, especially when most of our elementary school students will have at least had some experience with ukulele just through their regular music instruction. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan, you've got your hand up still. Sorry, I just want to make sure I haven't missed you.
No, sorry, it's a legacy
Okay.
hand. I'll take it down.
That's all good. Nicole.
Yeah, so I guess what I would say is that not being able to rebuild a program where we haven't properly reviewed it, in my view. I think that's the problem, is that we have these conversations and we invite people to the table, but we don't do it in a kind of formal way where folks know we're reviewing the program. We're looking to find ways to deliver it differently. Maybe we're looking to find ways to put it into the timetable differently so that it's funded. If I thought that, the money that's being cut here was going to go back into musical programming, but it was through a different vision where we had collaborated and established that vision, and we wanted to deliver it in what we see as a more equitable way, I would be excited to hear about that. But I feel like this is a shortcut, and I think it shortchanges folks that benefit a great deal from that 1.81 FTE. But I'm hearing what my colleagues are saying. And I guess the only other thing that really I wanted to say was that I would like us to circle back and just look at that network infrastructure piece and to see whether there's any room to put some more money on the table here by funding that in a slightly different way. But I appreciate the time and the fact that we also want to get through a bylaw reading before the end of the meeting.
Yeah, no, thanks, Nicole. Trustee Whitaker, go ahead.
Do we have something? Are we voting?
Oh, sorry. No, never mind. Sorry, you were muffled. Sorry, go ahead.
So am I allowed to put something else on the table here? Or?
I can't hear you, Trustee Whitaker. Sorry.
Am I allowed to put another suggestion onto the table or another motion?
Yep.
Okay, so what I would like to see is under maintenance, the 2 carpenters added. I'd like to put that as 1 carpenter instead of 2. Hopefully they can work with the carpenters that are there and not be lonely. And I would like to put that money back to collaboration time.
Okay. So take scrolling up here. 168,009 currently in the asks for 2 carpenters. The motion is to cut that, I'm assuming, cut that in half or reduce that by 1, and then take that balance and put it to collaboration time. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Nicole. Okay. Discussion.
Can I ask something for clarification?
Yeah.
So are you taking the remainder of the 40,000 plus this, half of this, and putting it in collaboration, or just this?
No, so just the savings from that to put back to collaboration. And my hoping is that we're going to have more surplus, and that could then be a discussion in September for filling that pot up a little bit more.
Okay, because
so
we
just the one carpenter putting that back. The 40,000 is staying untouched.
Did I not? I'm sorry. It's getting late and I've had a very long day. I'm
That's
not
okay.
being very clear.
That's okay. I think we all feel that. Okay, so the motion on the floor, it's been seconded. Take 1 away from the 2 carpenters and put that towards collab time. Any discussion? Nicole, go ahead, and then Elaine.
Yeah, I wondered whether we could hear from our staff about the extent to which we have received any feedback from our stakeholders. I appreciate that they're not around the table tonight, but just around this specific piece of collaboration time and how much of a priority this is for them. Have we heard, like in the context of programs and services being cut, have we heard from, for instance, our GVTA reps about collaboration time and how much of a priority that is for them?
Okay, over to staff. I'm not sure who wants to take that.
I can kick us off, I think. I have not heard directly around collaboration time unless it's in the GBTA letter. I'm not sure, I don't recall. We know that it has been an important discretionary ability for principals to provide release time for specific initiatives that a teacher or teacher team might want to take on. but we are hearing less about it this year. And we have to remind, well, in my opinion, and I think I have to remind us that it is largely, it is less than 50% spent, I think, each year, if my stats are recalled correctly from the financial services team. It's largely underspent. So I'd say less feedback about it this year than last year. And the fact that it is an underspent budget. And I don't know if Deb or the rest of the senior team wanted to add anything.
Okay. Deb or anyone else? If not, yeah, Deb, go ahead.
Yeah, I can, it is, I think it is, I don't speak specifically for a level, but I do think it is valued across the district. However, when we do look at the current reductions, I'm not sure it pops to the top or doesn't. So I agree with the comments by Secretary Treasurer Morris. I do think some schools use it extensively to support school goals and align with the strategic plan, but it's not all used or completely used.
Okay, thank you. Nicole, was there a follow-up there?
Just briefly, if I might, and again, I apologize.
And then I've got, sorry, and then I've got Elaine and Jordan on deck. So go ahead, Nicole.
You know what? I'll reserve my comments for after. I'd like to hear from my colleagues first.
Sure. Elaine, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm not going to support moving one of the carpenters out of the ask column up into the collaboration. We know what our aging infrastructure is like. We know that we need to address it. And this was a small way to start on the path to doing that. So I'm not in favor of the motion on the floor.
Okay, thank you. Jordan?
I'm gonna say the same thing. And also just wanted to point out how we heard so clearly from students how valuable their learning environment is to them. And I know we often don't think of that as like, you know, that a carpenter is close to the student, but they are, because they are helping to maintain the place in which these students are spending, you know, all of their days. So to me, I think that we need them, and not having them will cost us money, but I also think that it reflects the student priorities based on everything we heard from them on their spaces.
Okay, thanks, Jordan. Nicole?
Sorry, this is a bit out of left field, but if you'll just indulge me for a minute, this is really just to Trustee Whitaker, who put the motion forward. I just wanted to say, you know, in light of comments from colleagues, I'm wondering whether we could instead consider that, sorry, I'm just trying to find my note. We had one more ask from our Indigenous Education department. And it was to do with teacher and QP staffing. And I'm just wondering if any kind of reallocation could meet that ask instead. But I don't know if that requires really an amendment or just starting over again. But and again, I appreciate if Trustee Whitaker doesn't think that's a good idea, and in which case to ignore me. I'll bring it up later.
It's
Trustee Whitaker, any thoughts?
Yeah, the other ask that you're saying is 136,000 that INET asked for. And just sorry, what was the? I mean,
40,000 is what we have in balance right now.
Yeah, so that was why I didn't really point to that. And if I could just speak, is I'm well aware that a lot of schools do very collaborative goals and work towards those school goals and use those collaboration dollars to have those meetings with the broader community and to come up with that. Well, I hear that it's not all being used. Some of it is being used. And if we're going to ask our schools to implement and create and put forward these goals and actually have success, then we have to have opportunities or a tool for them to say, yes, I want some collab time. Is there something there? And if there is no budget, they're not going to ask for it. So while I do see the other INED that I'd like to see filled, I have other thoughts towards that, because what we've only got 40,000, I think, or maybe 80,000 from the carpenter, which isn't going to cover the 136. So for me, I think if there is, just like you made the comments of, if there is nothing there, then how do you rebuild a program? If there is no collaboration time, and I know how hard that teachers have fought and advocated to have this time and to increase this time, especially as we were changing curriculum and as we go and we are coming out of COVID, and we're looking to, you know, what is the new reality? How are they going to come together and have those conversations if there isn't even a line item for collaboration time? They'll be doing that on their own time after hours, and it creates animosity, creates burnout in teachers. It's just nice to know that there is some budget there. So that's my hope for at least leaving it there, so that as funding gets better, that teachers have something that they can use as a platform to start rebuilding that fund, if that's what they feel that is the best way to support their mentorship.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Whitaker. Any other comments? We do have $40,043 remaining in unallocated balance here. So I don't know if anybody wants to put that towards something or consider how that can be spent. Nicole?
I wonder if we could just revisit the reading recovery piece. I'm just concerned that we're, you know, I know this isn't quite enough to cover it, but I also am minded that we don't know that we can run, you know, continue to run the programs for the schools that do want it. And we don't know that our fellow districts are going to get rid of the program. And so, or the effect of us pulling our portion of the funding will have on them, in addition to the 3 elementary schools that are saying that they would like to continue with the program. So, you know, we had this discussion last budget season about reading recovery, and we acknowledge that it's a small number of children, relatively speaking, that benefit from it. But it is so specialized, and, you know, it seems so fit for purpose when it comes to that one-on-one assistance to help struggling readers get to where they need to go and build that confidence, that I would hate for us to not spend a few minutes at least discussing that impact and considering whether we can, until we have that clarity, find the money.
Okay, so sorry, I am just realizing before we jump in, I'm sorry, Nicole, I am tired, and so I should have caught this. The Carpenter motion that was moved by Trustee Whitaker was actually seconded by you, Nicole. So it actually is on the floor for a motion and consideration. So I don't want to run ahead until we actually vote on that. So or unless someone wants to, Trustee Whitaker is happy to remove it if she wants, or withdraw it, but at this point it's on the floor. So the motion is to take one of the Carpenter roles, remove that, and put it into collaboration time. The motion is on the floor. Is there any discussion on that motion?
If you want, if the collaboration time is the issue, I'm happy to break that motion apart and just make it about removing one of the Carpenters. And then we can decide with the savings later.
We need an amendment. So as current, the motion is to take one of the Carpenters in the ask and put that time towards collaboration time. So I will put forward the amendment to remove the collaboration time piece and just leave it as removing the one Carpenter. And then maybe when we see the dollars add up, we'll have a better idea of what to do with them. Sure. So you move the main motion. So I need somebody else to amend the main motion, please. So Nicole is going to amend the main motion to strike add to collaboration time. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. And we'll just,
Okay.
I think that's a good suggestion, yeah. And I'm happy to do it, yeah.
Okay, and Trustee Whitaker, I'm assuming you'll second.
Sure.
All right, so the motion on the floor is to amend the original motion to strike add to collaboration time and just remove one of the carpenters from the asks. Does everyone understand what we're voting on? Just want to make sure we all are clear. I'm seeing nods, so good. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor of removing one of the carpenters and putting it, removing one of the carpenters. Those opposed? And that is defeated. So Trustee Whitaker and Trustee Duncan in favor, the rest opposed. So the amendment is defeated. The main motion now is back to the original, which is remove one carpenter and put it towards collaboration time. So that's the original motion. We defeated the amendment. Now we're on the main motion. Any discussion on the main motion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor of taking one carpenter and putting that allocation towards collaboration time, please signify by raising your hand. And sorry, Nicole, your hand. Okay, there we go. All those opposed. And that motion is defeated. So we're back. Sorry, Nicole, we're back to your reading recovery discussion. I'm glad we cleared that up because I didn't want to leave that hanging. Okay, so Nicole would like to have a quick discussion around reading recovery and the uncertainty of what it means if we cut that back, if our colleagues in Suk and Saanich desire to maintain. Trustees, sorry, go ahead, Nicole. No, go ahead.
Sorry, and I just, and the uncertainty around whether the 3 elementary schools that want to continue to use the program can. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I was saying that in my head and I wasn't saying it out loud. I appreciate that. Any discussion on that? This isn't a motion, I think. I don't see a motion to remove that reduction. So how do folks feel about reading recovery being in here? Does staff have any comments to make to help inform trustees? Or does anyone have any comments?
So, Chair, if I may, so that I just to remind folks of the numbers because it is getting late. So it's 73,525, and you mentioned that we have 40,000.
40,000 left right now.
Yeah,
40,043.
Yeah. So I guess really what I'm looking for is, a sense of how my colleagues feel about the uncertainty here. If we were to cut this without knowing the impacts. Both to other school districts and also to the 3 schools that want to continue to provide it. And if folks agree that we don't want to do that without understanding the impacts, can we find the other 33,000 and change that we would require in order to move that off the cut list?
Okay, I see Tom's hand up. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. We did have this discussion last year, and the staff indicated to us that the reading recovery teachers that we have are well acquainted with the program, and they, for the small number of schools that are doing it, it's not worthwhile our maintaining this particular position. So that's my understanding of it.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Elaine?
I'm of the same opinion that after the discussion last year and us trying to save the program last year, and now we're down to 3 schools. We had way more last year, but they're all switching to the literacy programs that are being developed in the district. So I'm not inclined to remove it from the reduction list.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing and hearing no further comments. Nicole, was there, from those who we've heard from, there doesn't seem to be much of a consensus to remove it. So how are you feeling?
Well, I mean, I think some of this for me depends on how we deal with the work infrastructure piece in terms of funding that. But again, I'm minded that we're now at 10:30. And, you know, we've made some significant progress, but not sure we can do more tonight. But leave that to you, Chair.
Yeah, I was going to recommend, thanks, Nicole, you actually segued beautifully into what I was going to say next, is we have 40,000 on the table left for balance. So I think it would be good, and it doesn't mean that if we put it towards something that's the budget. We have 2 more readings, but I feel like it would be good if we allocated that 40,043 towards something, so that we can read a bylaw into the record and pass it. Kim, does that, or are we able to leave this 40,043 and read the bylaw? My understanding is that we can't read a bylaw that isn't in balance. So can you help us a bit on that?
Sorry, am I on mute? No. I believe you can. You're in your first of 3 readings, but you may want to just pass a motion, or you may just want to reduce perhaps your risk amount by the same amount, and we can add it back and revisit on Thursday. Rather than committing it to an expenditure, you could reduce a risk amount and then know that we are coming back to 40,000 to spend on Thursday if you like.
Sure. Do folks feel okay with doing that? Because we all know where it's going. We can pull it back out on Thursday. It's a place to park it for right now, so that when we come back to discuss through second and third reading, we can move it back. All right, I've got some thumbs up, but I don't want to do it unless everyone is feeling comfortable. I'm getting nods, yeses.
Sorry, can you clarify? Yeah. Sorry, I was looking for.
So yeah, that's okay. So Jordan, we've got this 40,043 left. Kim has recommended, very clever suggestion, I think, is that we just take the amount out of our risk portion, just so that we're balanced right now. And then when we come back on Thursday, we'll know we have that 40,043 still to allocate. See, she's just done it there in the Excel spreadsheet. She reduced.
You could say by consensus on Thursday, we reverse that.
I could just pull it back spend out. That.
Oh, well, I mean, I appreciate that. I think we're at 10:30 and I'm starting to flag considerably. So I don't want to stymie debate, Jordan, but would you be okay waiting for Thursday?
Yeah, no, I think it's a fine idea. And I think putting it in the risk is probably a smart choice anyways, but I just know that there are some pieces that, especially some one-time costs that might be worth considering, like snowplow.
Yeah,
alter.
I agree. Okay,
so we can talk about that on Wednesday.
You don't get snow in Victoria.
Don't say that, Elaine. So our current new bylaw amount, as I understand it, Kim, can you highlight it for me? 268,416,946. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So trustees, we have, well, I'm going to go through first reading.
Oh, just hang on 1 sec. We added to local capital, didn't we?
Oh, right. Sorry. I'll let you.
Did we? No, I don't think we changed local capital, so we're good.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I'm just going to go through first reading tonight, trustees, and then we can do second and third on Thursday. I think that's fine. So recommended motion that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, 2022-2023 annual budget bylaw in the amount of 268,416,946 be read a first time the 4th day of April 2022. Can I have a mover for this motion, please? Moved by Elaine, seconded by Tom. Is there any discussion on the first reading of our budget bylaw? Understanding that we're coming back on Thursday to do this all over again. Seeing and hearing no discussion, I'll call the question on the first reading. All those in favor, please signify. Opposed? And it passes with Nicole and Anne opposed. Okay, and we'll leave second reading for second and third reading for Thursday.
Is there not a reason? Is there not a reason we wouldn't do second tonight?
We could do second tonight. I don't know how comfortable people feel with doing second tonight. There's there's not much of a difference between doing second tonight and doing second and third on Thursday. Nicole?
Yeah.
I just
from
don't
my
want to
pers-
rush us, Elaine. That's all. Sorry, Nicole, go ahead.
Oh, I just was going to agree. I think from my perspective, we've done a lot of work, and I think it would be better for us as a board to give ourselves a little bit more breathing space to make any other changes on second and third reading rather than do it tonight. But I'm at the will of the board, and that's just my 2 cents.
As am I. So, I mean, trustees are this is the recommended motion. If trustees want to move a second reading tonight, we can do a second reading tonight. I would prefer that we wait for second and third on Thursday, but that's just because I'm tired. Elaine, any thoughts on that?
It's just we usually do first and second and then save third. So I would put second reading on the floor.
Okay, Elaine has moved second reading. Is there a seconder for the motion? Okay, moved by Tom. So second reading is that the Board of Education of School District number 61, 2022-2023 annual budget bylaw in the amount of $268,416,946 be read a second time the 4th day of April 2022. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor of second reading, please signify. Those opposed. Nicole and Trustee Whitaker opposed. So second reading passes. Adjournment. Can I please have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Tom, seconded by
Actually, just
Gordon.
before we go.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, Trustee Whitaker, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a clarification when we were discussing the communications coordinator. At no point did I make a comment that I didn't think the communication coordinator was doing a good job. And the chair clearly made comments to that seemed that way. And I just want to clarify that. And I would like that the colleagues around the table treat each other and the comments that they're making and the opinions that they have and treat them with respect. I was speaking to the position and to whether or not I felt that that was a good use of our dollars during such a tight budget. So going forward, I just hope that the chair will, maybe hold their personal thoughts on that and just have respect for what people are saying and that is their opinion. And we're all entitled to that. So I hope that we can just conduct ourselves a little differently in the future.
Sure, and just because you brought it up, Trustee Whitaker, I would like to apologize. I am very tired. I've had a long day, as I'm sure we all have, and I think I took a little bit of my tiredness out on you, which I shouldn't have. My job here as the chair is to direct the discussion and not to take things personally and act out in a way that is personal. So I do apologize for that. It certainly was misdirected frustration and anger, I think, in your direction. So I offer that apology. Motion to adjourn. I think that was moved by Elaine and seconded by Jordan. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? Sorry, Trustee Whitaker, I didn't see how you voted.
Oops, let's get out of here.
Okay.